Hello, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to this Thursday edition of Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup as we continue to edge ever closer to the 34th Breeders' Cup World Championships here at Del Mar. 1 day, 4 hours, 24 minutes away. That's right. All the championship action begins tomorrow afternoon with 4 championship races, 9 more scheduled for Saturday, and we are happy to have you back with us here live from Del Mar at the top of the stretch once again this morning as we take you through a look at so many of the horses who are making the final preparations. And these are the moments when you start to get maybe a little bit anxious if you're a trainer, if you're an owner, even if you're a jockey looking ahead to your mount. Maybe it's your first Breeders' Cup mount. Well, tomorrow you get a chance to start putting all the pieces together, and we couldn't be happier to be able to bring you all this action on this Breakfast at Breeders' Cup program this morning. I'm Mike Penna of the Horse Racing Radio Network, along with my sidekick, former top trainer, that's Jude Feld, pontiff of the Pick 4. He'll be pontificating throughout those 13 championship races this year, my friend.
Absolutely, and Arrogate just coming off the track, and I'll tell you, the Pony Boy and the exercise rider, Dana Barnes, big smiles on their face after he galloped this morning. He looked sensational, and he looks happy going back to the barn, too, just skipping along, doing everything right today, and two huge smiles. I love to see that.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a horse that doesn't like Del Mar at this point from the view that we're getting now. And I know he's just kind of walking off the track, but he certainly looks like a horse that can handle this surface.
Well, he was handling it this morning. He was hauling the mail, and Dana didn't have any problems. She's such a great exercise rider. She used to gallop horses for me back in the day before she was famous, before she was married to Jimmy Barnes, Bob's top assistant. But she just was grinning ear to ear when she pulled him up and they started coming by. They're still smiling. They've been smiling for the last 3-4 minutes at least.
Yeah, Arrogate, very, very dangerous, and a horse that I don't want to say being overlooked in here, but I think if you looked at this race, the Breeders' Cup Classic, just a few months ago, before Arrogate suffered his 2 defeats, you would have been looking at Arrogate being the 1-9 favorite in here. He would have been prohibitive, even with a horse like Gunrunner in the mix, because Arrogate had been so dominant. Now, not so much. Gunrunner, the morning line favorite, he was on the track just a short time ago, right before we came on the air, and it kind of does seem like Arrogate is being overlooked just a little bit here this year.
Yeah, let him overlook him some more. I like that because I'm a big Arrogate fan.
Here's Finest City, a contender for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. And if you're wondering, by the way, about our colleague Jeff Bloom, who has been with us the past few mornings, he's kind of taking this day off, and I think rightfully so. He is enjoying some time with his clients at Bloom Racing Stables as they get ready for their 2 Breeders' Cup contenders, Snapper Sinclair and
Sky Diamonds.
Sky Diamonds, yeah.
Yeah, what a thrill that is for Jeff, and kind of for us too. We're happy to see our colleague doing so well. He's had a fantastic year with his Bloom Racing Stable, and so he's out there being as nervous as Jeff can get, which is pretty keyed up.
Finest City, but she ran lights out last year. She hasn't quite been the same leading into this year's Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, but is she still dangerous in that spot?
Well, I think so. You always have to look at the defending champion, and she has had an off year for her, but she's got a couple representative races, and nobody would fall over dead if she won the race, that's for sure.
So many of the Breeders' Cup horses have made their way to the racetrack already this morning. We'll see plenty more as we take you through 10 o'clock Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern. And, Jude, that looks like Firenze Fire out there, a huge winner last time out, contender for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, took the Champagne in impressive fashion, and Firenze Fire just kind of doing his thing out there at the moment, looking pretty happy.
Yeah, I thought his last race was excellent, and he's still on his toes and looking good, so he must have come out of it in great shape, and definitely a big contender in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile.
Yeah, that's an interesting race. The Juvenile, of course, a horse that will likely determine the Winterbook favorite for next year's Run for the Roses. 2 undefeated horses are entered into this year's Juvenile, with the likely favorite Bolt Doro and the Tabulator, who is completely flying under the radar. He's a big long shot, especially for a horse that hasn't lost yet. You have 2 maidens in Give Me a Minute, the Louisiana bred trained by Dallas Stewart, and Good Magic from the barn of Chad Brown. And then you have Dale Romans, who has a pair of horses in Free Drop Billy and Hollywood Star. Dale still looking to break through and pick up that elusive first win in the juvenile. So plenty of storylines to go around. And then you throw in the likes of Hall of Fame trainer Bob Baffert, who is in search of a 4th win in the juvenile. It would be his first since 2013, though, if he can pull it off. And he has Solimini going to the post in there. Getting a look now at Free Drop Billy, one of the Romans contenders.
Yeah, he's a beautiful horse. You can see his very powerful hind quarters. He's got that distinctive white face, and he's just a really cool horse. Dale likes him a lot. He said he's coming into this race in fantastic shape. He, as trainers like to say, wouldn't trade places with anybody.
No, not at all. You asked him during an interview that we had back on Tuesday morning, I guess it was, and you asked him about the competition, and you said, who are some of the horses that you're a little nervous about? And he said, well, all of them, but of course Bolt Doro, you have to be nervous about him because he's been so sensational. He has the home court advantage being based here on the West Coast. But then he said, my other horse I like in there is Hollywood Star, which is, of course, trained by Dale Roman.
Well, of course, Dale never ran a horse he didn't like, but Hollywood Star is a nice horse too, but Free Drop Billy is really a sensational horse.
We were there when he won the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland last time out. Your thoughts on that performance? I thought it was really good.
I thought it was good. It was sharp. Of course, I have to say that you and I are kind of Dale fans, and we're happy that that Dale has some nice 2-year-olds and looking forward to Kentucky Derby season. But I thought his race was dynamite. He's a very good horse. Now, I have not seen Bolt Doro run in person, but his form is impeccable, and I think he's going to be a force in that race for sure. And I haven't seen much of him on the racetrack either, so we'll see what happens.
Dale Roman's 0 for 6 in the juvenile. He was second last year, but not this time. He was third the year before with Brody's Cause. Both of those owned by the Albaugh family stables, and they are the owners, of course, of his contenders this year as well. So looking forward to seeing those horses go to the post, as well as Firenze Fire, who you're getting another look at now. Jude, what are we seeing from Firenze Fire here this morning?
Well, he looks happy. He's cruising right along. He's a nice-looking horse, obviously, and I think it's a perfect gallop. He's picking it up right there. You see the rider just moved his hands ever so slightly, and he just took off, thinking he was going to get to run some. But looks like he's certainly searching for more to do. But it's getting close to the big race. Got to save something in the tank.
The 4th Breeders' Cup starter for trainer Jason Service will be his first one in the juvenile, though. And Firenze Fire, by the way, would be the 4th Florida bred ever to win this race, and certainly looks like he is a major player. Hard to overlook him. I mentioned the Tabulator, who comes out of the big win at Churchill Downs, undefeated, just like Bolt Doro. They're the only 2 undefeated runners in this year's juvenile, but the Tabulator not getting any respect by the morning line odds maker.
Yeah, I don't understand that because he's a very nice horse, and he's looked sensational out here in the mornings. From the first day when we were doing this show Monday, he galloped great, and he's been doing it ever since. I think he looks good, and at 20-1, I'm certainly going to throw him in my exactas and tries.
And Dale told us the other day that he's a good horse. You remember his Highway Star was second to the Tabulator last time out, and he said you can't overlook the Tabulator. He's a runner.
Yeah, and you get Jose Valdivia on top of it, who's had a fantastic year, a really good guy and an excellent rider. And Jose plied his trade for many years in California, so he knows Del Mar as well.
All right, here's Paradise Woods, a major player for the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff, one of several 3-year-olds going to the post in that race. And she is trained by Hall of Famer Richard Mandela, who, believe it or not, has never lost the Distaff. He's a perfect 2 for 2. Both of those wins coming with his champion filly, Beholder. Paradise Woods, not up to par at the level of Beholder, but she is very, very good.
Yeah, she's impressive on occasion. She's not the most reliable horse in the world, but Richard told me it was either Sunday morning or Monday morning that he's very pleased with how she's going, and she really seems to be coming up to her best race here at Del Mar. So that's a big hope for him. It's a tough field, and she's maybe not as accomplished as a lot of the horses in the race, but you can never count Richard Mandela out at the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, she punched her ticket to this race with a 5-length score in the Grade 1 Zenyatta at Santa Anita on September 30th. She's only had one start here at Del Mar. It came on August 27th. She was a disappointing 6th that afternoon as the heavy favorite, but she did have an excuse. She stumbled coming out of the starting gate.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, she's an in-and-outer a little bit, but, she's still young, and she's a little bit still learning the ropes, so to speak. she hasn't had a real steady amount of races and stuff. She's been taking little rests here and there. So one of these days she's gonna catch on completely, and she may win 4 or 5 in a row.
Yeah, you're going to hear from Hall of Fame trainer Richard Mandela coming up later in the show this morning. We told people yesterday that I had the opportunity, and it was a great opportunity, to sit down and visit with Richard and with Hall of Fame trainer Bill Mott, who sends out elate in that Distaff. He's looking for a 6th victory in the race, is Bill Mott. I sat down with the two of them together in Richard's barn, and it was an amazing, amazing visit. And we're going to play that entire interview for you coming up later on in the program. So stay with us. You won't want to miss that particular interview. Here's Lady Eli, Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf contender, the beautiful-looking daughter of Divine Park. Man, she is just so elegant, so classy, and this will be her final career start coming up on Saturday.
I don't think there's a horse on the grounds that's trained better, looked better than Lady Eli. She's just really at the top of her game. Chad Brown thinks so as well. Her last work was sensational. According to Chad, she never worked better, and I expect her to win. She's very, very talented.
You remember she took the Juvenile Phillies Turf in 2014, and she enters this year on a 3-race winning streak. Hasn't started since taking the Boston Spa at Saratoga on August 26th. But, Jude, I did have an opportunity to talk with Chad yesterday, stop by his barn, and we talked more about him saying goodbye to Lady Eli and what Lady Eli has meant to their stable. And, one thing he said to me was that what's going to make it difficult is that they're saying goodbye to a horse that has taught them so much. He said, it's taught us what's possible when we all come together as a team and the things that we can accomplish. And you remember, here's a filly that nearly died of laminitis, missed the Breeders' Cup in 2015, came back, lost by a nose last year, and he said she has taught us as much as we've been teaching her.
Yeah, well, it was quite a bad deal. She stepped on a nail going back to the barn after she was in the test barn at Belmont Park, and they pulled the nail out. Everything seemed fine, and then a couple days later, the leg she was standing on, her right leg, started showing signs of laminitis. Then it went to the left where the nail had been, and she was very, very close to death at one time. But he has found a great team of doctors to take care of her, and his grooms and assistants and everything. Everybody pulled together, and here she is. I mean, she's been sensational since she came back. She's won 4 graded stakes, 3 grade ones, and she's just training unbelievably good and looks fantastic.
Chad told me as well that last year's loss by a nose in the Filly Mare Turf to Queen's Trust, who, by the way, she meets again this year, he said that defeat was maybe the most difficult defeat that he's ever had as a trainer in all of his entire career. And I thought that was interesting. And he said that one took a while to get past. And then I asked him, I said, well, because you were so close last year and you wanted it so much last year and it was so difficult on you when you didn't get it, does it make you come back and want it even more this year? And believe me, he wants it very, very much for a horse like Lady Eli.
Yeah, I think he'd really like to have her go out a winner. This is going to be her last race, so she deserves that. And she's perfect right now. I mean, she gives you chills when you watch her go, and when she's coming off the track. And it's a cloudy day here at Del Mar. It's going to be blue skies a little later, I think, but. You can't really appreciate her coat until the sun hits her, but she just stands out. I mean, she's very queenly. She knows she's the best, and she just seems to adore that status.
Yeah, Chad said this would be the signature win of his entire career. He said this would be the greatest moment of his training career. She goes out on top coming up on Saturday afternoon, and Lady Eli, boy, does she look pretty here this morning. What do you make of this little gallop here, Jude?
Oh, it's perfect. I mean, she's just cruising right along, and she's been doing this all week long. I mean, just super. She never really turns a hair. Yesterday, she was doing a little leaping. I mean, she's as good as a horse can get for a race. I'm very optimistic about her chances.
Well, let's tell you what you can expect here over the course of the next few hours here on the Breakfast at Breeders' Cup program. We're going to be joined in just a couple of minutes by Hall of Fame jockey Mike Smith, the all-time leader in wins in Breeders' Cup history. He'll stop by. Fred Hertrich is the chairman of the Breeders' Cup. He'll be with us in this first hour of the program as well. Alistair Donald of the International Racing Bureau is set to join us at 9 o'clock, and Mark Casse scheduled for a visit as well. So a lot of things to get to. We're going to cover a lot of ground for you over the course of the next 3 hours. Stay with us in partnership with Horse Racing Radio Network. This is Breakfast at Breeders' Cup. Welcome back to Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. Mike Penna, Jude Feld, live from Del Mar in Southern California, getting you ready for the 34th Breeders' Cup World Championships, which begin in earnest tomorrow with 4 championship races. 9 more coming up on Saturday. We'll have all that coverage for you exclusively on the Horse Racing Radio Network. You can see a complete schedule on our website at horseracingradio.net. Of course, the final race of the day on Saturday is that $6 million Breeders' Cup Classic, and all eyes will be on that showdown between the Easterner Gunrunner and the horse who has been so dominant, well, all over the world. That's Arrogate, who will be ridden by Hall of Fame jockey Mike Smith, who is nice enough to spend a few minutes with us this morning here on the set. And Mike has won more Breeders' Cup races than any jockey in history, 25, looking to add to that total this year. Mike, appreciate a few minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to be on.
Yeah. Could you ever imagine that you'd be sitting here as a 25-time Breeders' Cup winner when you first started out?
No, honestly, I really couldn't. But if you go back and look at the horses I've been blessed to ride, you could see how it could happen. I've been very blessed to ride some great horses and have some great ones coming up for these next 2 days. I'm really, really excited about this. Hopefully we can, good Lord's willing, we can add to it.
You know, we talked a little while ago that a few months ago, if we looked at Arrogate and we thought about the Breeders' Cup Classic, it would be inconceivable that he wouldn't be an overwhelming favorite in here. But because of his last 2 starts, he's not. What happened?
Well, it's not only of his last 2 starts. I also believe it's also Gunrunner's last 2 or 3 starts. That's probably put him favorite. He seems to have stepped forward some from the Dubai World Cup, and he's doing really, really well, and he's a deserving favorite. We got beat down here this summer. Circumstances, I think that Dubai might have took a little more out of him than what we thought. The traveling before we went to Dubai, then Dubai, and his legs just weren't there, and this racetrack was really deep opening week during the San Diego the summer meet. He just wasn't there. Came back in the Pacific Classic, certainly ran a whole lot better than people think. He ran a 115 buyer, man. That was sick. Collected's a good horse. I mean, he's a real good horse. So if you're not on top of your game, 100%, he's going to beat you. And that's what happened. He ran a whole lot better, but Collected just ran better that day. Since then, Bob's had time to really freshen him up. We really slowed his works down. Get his energy level back. He showed last time that he'd run over this racetrack. It might not ever be his favorite, but he'll run over it. If his energy level's there like it was, earlier last year, then we'll be all right.
Well, if you saw him gallop this morning, which a lot of people watching did, just a sensational gallop. And when Dana pulled him up, she was smiling ear to ear, and her and the pony boy, they smiled for the next 10 minutes. It was like a wedding almost. It was insane. But
that's a big handicapping way to go. If you see Dana smiling, trust me, they're doing good.
Yeah, she used to gal for me. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, thanks for that info there. That's good to hear. You just gave me goosebumps.
Mike, you hold almost every single record in the Breeders' Cup, but it's interesting. When you look at the Breeders' Cup Classic, 4 of your 25 victories have come in that race. Your first, of course, with Skipaway back in '97. You think back to that day, that was pretty special. What do you remember about that day?
You know, it's really funny. I just remember that, they had to supplement him. So, Sonny Hines, he was quite the character. Well, I love him. God rest his soul, man. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. But the last thing he told me when he legged me up, he said, Mikey, he said, I had to put up $480,000 to run Skippy. Just let Skippy run. Those were my instructions. If I didn't need any more pressure, he had to make sure that I knew he put up $480,000 running. I let Skippy run that day, too. Trust me, he opened up about 10.
You did, too. Yeah, he ran a gangbuster race. Well, if you can pull off a 5th victory this year with Arrowgate, you're going to equal fellow Hall of Famers Jerry Bailey and Chris McCarron with 5 victories in the Classic. So they
Two of my idols.
Yeah, they've still got you by 1. What would that mean to you to equal them?
Oh, man, it would be incredible. Just to be where I'm at. I mean, to be honest with you, at this stage of my career, to been able to accomplish what I've been blessed to accomplish is pretty cool on its own. But I'd really like to go out this Breeders' Cup big. I've been wanting this Breeders' Cup here at Del Mar for I don't know how long, and I'm excited that it's here. It deserves to be here, and hopefully it's going to be here a whole lot more. And being that it's Arrowgate's last race, and I know what he's capable of, I just want everyone to see it one more time.
Yeah. So you're going to let him run, too, huh?
I'm going to let Arrowgate run, man.
All right, before we let you go, let's do a real quick kind of word association game. We'll have a little fun here. We mentioned Skipaway. All right, I'm going to say a name of your other Classic winners. I just want you to tell me the first couple of thoughts that come to mind about that day and about that horse. 2009, Zenyatta.
Might have been the best Classic ever. It was electrifying. I mean, the ground literally shook, and it wasn't an earthquake. Usually it's an earthquake when it's in California, but, I mean, the ground shook that day. That's how crazy people were going in the grandstand.
2 years later, Drosselmeyer.
What a pleasant surprise. Don't ever think that we ever got to see the best of Drosselmeyer. I actually thought that, he had a lot of feet problems. He was just getting good when he ran in the Classic that year. I'd like to have seen him run one more year.
All right, last year, Arrowgate.
Phenomenal. Breathes different air, this horse. When he runs his A game, he's just different.
He's Hall of Famer Mike Smith. He's different, too, and he definitely breathes different air than some of those other jockeys when he's on his A game. Mikey, we appreciate it, as always. Thank you for spending a few minutes. We know you got some other obligations this morning, so thanks for taking some time, as always.
Thank you. Nice to be on. Good to see you guys.
All right, that's Hall of Famer Mike Smith, and, again, looking to add to that record total this year. And, boy, he's holding a pretty strong hand. He also will be aboard Dre Fong, the defending champion in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and that's another horse, Jude. We talked about it during the week. He's going to take some beating coming up on Saturday.
I was just thinking while Mike was talking, we had talked about several races, and every horse that we talked about, Mike Smith was on, so that's always a good sign.
Yeah, and great to hear him say, that Jerry Bailey, Chris McCarron, 2 of his idols, and now he can equal his idols with a victory in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Yeah,
that's special.
It's fantastic. I mean, he's phenomenal and always gets the top mounts and rides them perfectly. So he like he said, you need no other accolades. He's had a great career.
Yeah, and let me tell you something else about Mike Smith. He's a very busy person this week. He, Bob Baffert, as you would expect, getting pulled in a lot of different directions by television crews, local television people, NBC, us here on the network, other media. And Mike and I were texting yesterday. I knew he was busy. He was coming out this morning. He's got a busy schedule this morning, but he always makes time for many media people as he can, and he's always been very good to us. So we thank Mike Smith for taking a few minutes with us here this morning.
Yeah, super gracious guy.
All right, we're going to get to one other short break. We will come back on the other side of this. We're going to be joined by Fred Hertrich, who is the chairman of the Breeders' Cup. Won't want to miss this interview. Stay tuned. Live from Del Mar, you're watching Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. Welcome back to Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. Happy to have you with us live from Del Mar in Southern California. The first time the Breeders' Cup has come to this seaside destination in the 34-year history, and it promises to be a good one beginning tomorrow with those 4 championship races, culminating with the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and as we told you, 9 championship races scheduled for Saturday. Mike Penna, Jude Feld, we are positioned trackside down toward the top of the stretch this morning and have the privilege to be joined by the new chairman of the Breeders' Cup. That is Fred Hertrich. He is the owner of Watercress Farm in Paris, Kentucky. He succeeds Bill Farish Jr., who was the chairman here for a very long time, did a tremendous job, and now Fred has those big shoes to fill. So, Fred, welcome, my friend.
Mike, thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you and Jude, and certainly be here at Del Mar in this wonderful environment for the Breeders' Cup this year.
Yeah, not a bad way to break your maiden here as the chairman, to come out to Del Mar, huh?
Well, I'll tell you what, when you have the team that we have that put together this event, and then you get the venue that we have here at Del Mar, it has just been an absolute beginning to a dream, and of course, responsibility is all with those people, that Breeders' Cup team that's putting this on.
Yeah, they do have a fabulous staff, and everything seems to be going super smoothly, which is always a question mark when you go to a new venue. And
Right.
so we're fortunate about that, and everybody's been very helpful here. How about you? What's your experience with Del Mar?
Well, it's funny. I hadn't been to Del Mar in 10 years since I was here for opening day. And, of course, I came for a day and stayed for a week. So that was a great experience, and had an awful lot of fun. And just because I'm an East Coast guy, it's just not always convenient to get here. But, you know, I've trained horses with some of the great trainers out here and whatever. And it's just, to be back is almost like you kick yourself because you say, where have you been? You should have been taking this experience in more than just once every 10 years.
We talked to Del Mar CEO Joe Harper yesterday, and he was hoping that some of you Saratoga guys would take a liking to Del Mar and visit more often.
Well, Joe kind of gave me a case of the raspberries there the first night, because he says, Fred, we've both gotten a lot older, and he says, where have you been, son? So I promised Joe I'd be back, that's for sure, because it just can't get any better than this.
Getting a look at the winner of the Philly Mare Turf last year. That's the defending champion Queen's Trust, who is going along nice and easy on that turf course, and she looks like she's ready to go here, Fred.
She's got the ears perked. I mean, just look at the motion that she has, and you see why she is a champion, and they expect her to perform very, very well again. Everybody has marveled about the turf course that they have put in here, and it's remarkable. And look at her. Is she enjoying being out and playing this morning?
Yeah. These turf gallops and works between the breaks are ingenious. I mean, it's really a nice feature. And, of course, we appreciate it because it gives us some horses to watch while they're doing the track.
Absolutely. And as I say, just her motion and her action there, along with, look at those ears. I mean, she can't wait to go to work and defend her championship, that's for sure.
Yeah, she's on a 5-race losing streak coming into this year, but we talked about this on the show yesterday. Last year she was on a 6-race losing streak. So
I was going to say, Mike, if don't make sure you put $2 on her, because she may perform like the champion she is.
And what a great showdown with Lady Eli as well.
It's going to be wonderful. It's in talking to both connections, they're both very confident, and it should be one of the great races on the card.
Fred, not only are you the chairman of Breeders' Cup, but first and foremost, you're a horseman. I mentioned Watercress Farm in Paris, Kentucky. Take us through your background a little bit.
Mike, it's probably too long a story for this morning, but I started actually in the standardbred business, and with a couple friends, and we claimed a $3,000 claimer, and that became successful. And I said, boy, is this easy. And so I am still in the standardbred breeding business, but then we got into the thoroughbred business about, 18 years ago, and have built a commercial nursery out in Paris, and we sell into the commercial market. And we've been very fortunate to have bred some very, very good horses. I've got a tremendous staff at Watercrest. Shane Doyle's our farm manager, and Robert Tribbett kind of runs the operations, and we've been just on a great roll of late, and have produced an awful lot of great horses. So our people, I would commend our staff. We've done a great job.
Have you met Flavian Pratt?
Yes.
Okay, because his family's big into standardbreds
Yes.
in France.
Yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, Chad Brown and I had a Coca-Cola the other night together and reminisced a little bit because Chad's background, of course, he started in the standardbred business too, which a lot of people don't know. So, there a lot of people have come from that background and trainers, and it seems like a number of our trainers, successful trainers today, have come from the standardbred business or the quarter horse business.
Yeah, you're going to have an interest in the juvenile turf as well, because a horse that you bred, Catholic Boy, going to the post there, perfect 2 for 2 for Jonathan Thomas.
Catholic Boy was just never did anything wrong from the time he was born, and did well at the sale. We got paid well for him, and Jonathan was high in him from the beginning and kept sending us videos, and this horse is really going to be something, and he's done all his lessons well, and the team is confident that he's going to perform very well here. So we're extremely happy that he's in, and then we've got one of the other 2-year-old filly turf with Rushing Fall, and she looks like she's got a big opportunity there, and Chad and his team there are very confident in her. So we've got a lot of rooting interest tomorrow. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And who would have thought it all would come together like this?
Well, you have to understand that the sun and the moon and everything else better line up, and then you better be awfully lucky.
That's right. Here's Sway Dwa, the contender for the Breeders' Cup Mile. Huge win in the Shadwell Turf Mile at Keeneland last time out. We were there and brought you that coverage here on the network, and that was just a powerhouse effort by Sway Dwa.
It sure was, and again, it's almost like, you look at these fields, Mike, and you just say, oh my goodness, I remember this horse in this start, and that's why it's the Day of Champions and the Worldwide Day of Champions, because you can almost build a case for, every horse in every field to perform in a champion mode. I mean, it's just what a great lineup.
Yeah, I often tell people that what makes a Breeders' Cup so great is there's actually going to be some Grade 1 winners that run last. That's how good the races are. And they're so deep, and there's always a winner and a loser, and it's just incredible. And every horse you've seen out here, one thing I got to say, I have never in my life during Breeders' Cup seen horses train better than they've trained here.
Jude, I think, you're right. We were standing, and I guess it was the first morning I was here, which was Tuesday morning. I came in Monday, and I was outside here close to where you guys are right now with your set, and I couldn't hear the horses go over the track.
Yep.
The track staff, I know the superintendent, what a job they have done, both on the dirt track and the turf track, and every horse seems to be happy and excited to be on the racetrack. So you're right. It's kind of like, what tremendous surface is. And back to your point of a Grade 1 horse finishing last, there will be a couple Grade 1 winners finish last in their race, but yet they won't be embarrassed because they're going to race good. It's just the competition on that particular day, and the tenths or fifths of a second that will make a difference between winning and losing. There's another great champion.
Yeah,
Ulysses.
He was very nervous the first day he trained, but yesterday he trained just super, and he looks nice right now.
He certainly does.
Going to go out there and do his thing.
Fourth behind Highland Reel in last year's turf. Ulysses, trained by Sir Michael Stout, who is looking for a 5th Breeders' Cup turf victory. Just remarkable. Of course, he still trails Aidan O'Brien in that category, who has 6, but he's Aidan O'Brien.
Yeah. Sir Michael Stout is a sir.
Absolutely, and you know
and
what?
He's from Barbados.
Yeah, and they're 2 of the greats of all time. So that's going to be. I mean, what a race that will be.
Visiting with Breeders' Cup Chairman Fred Hertrich here on Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. Fred, what are some of your Breeders' Cup memories that you're just never going to forget that are always going to stand out to you?
I think, we saw a couple races last year that were maybe races that there weren't winners and losers, like, when the big horse beat, a horse that California Chrome that nobody, it was a race of champions.
Yep.
And then to see the 2 fillies or mares come down and Rick Porter happens to be a good friend. We're from the same state of Delaware. And to see those two champions go head-to-head coming down that long stretch, and you just said, to me, those were two of the greatest races that I have ever seen or ever witnessed, and it almost took your breath away. It was that type of an event and that type of race, and it's almost like, how do you follow that up? Well, trust me, these races in the next 2 days we'll follow that up, and we'll be talking about those races.
As the chairman of the Breeders' Cup, spend a little time talking about your responsibilities and then some of the goals that you're looking to accomplish as we move forward.
Mike, I think the board and, of course, the stewardship that Bill Farish provided prior to me being elected to this position, he really solidified the Breeders' Cup. And through the management team, with Craig and all his people, it's grown into this worldwide international event. As you know, we're starting 40 horses from outside the United States in the races. And we're getting more and more international and world competitors. And really all we can do is take what we're doing, which we think is really the landmark event of the year in the horse racing industry, and we want to take that to the next level. So with the competition, with the racetracks, with the venues, this is a lifestyle event. Everyone that's involved, however they're involved, is just very complimentary and very excited to be involved in the process and being able to attend the event. So all we can do, it's kind of like when I took over, I said the worst thing I can do is screw this thing up with the board. We just kind of got to let the machinery run, and because they are such a great staff. And, people have no idea to put an event on like this, and the month they come in prior to this, and the logistics involved, and the transportation of the horses coming from around the world and getting through the quarantine situation, and then the people on the backstretch and security and all the people that go in to put this on for the public that's going to view it, of course, on NBC television, as well as be here live and in color. It's an amazing.
Listening on radio.
And listening on radio, excuse me. Probably more listening on radio than anything else. Let me make sure I say that. So
I just couldn't let that go.
No. And I would be remiss without saying that. So it's great, and certainly with the board that is there, and they're there to really just keep coming up with ideas that can make it a better event, if at all possible. But of course, the real stars, you're looking at them on the screen. Without those great athletes and the people that work with them side by side every day, from the trainers to the jocks to the backstretch people to the people on the farms, there wouldn't be the event. So it's a tremendous undertaking, but the reward of it is just fantastic. So. We're so excited to be here and so excited with what is going to happen in the future.
Well, the Breeders' Cup is a great tribute to our sport altogether, and it's something that most of us in racing look forward to every year and can't wait to attend. So long may it wave.
Fred, you get to work with my good friend Dan Pride, too, who is the vice chairman. He was elected the same time you were back in September, and boy, great teammate to have by your side.
Dan's great people, and he never lacks for enthusiasm, and loves. I mean, I don't know. Before he goes to bed, he's excited, and when he jumps out of bed, he's more excited, and he's a great attribute to his organization at Darley and Sheikh Mohammed's organization, and. It's wonderful, and Dan's a great member of the board and a great attribute to the industry.
Fred, you're a graduate of Bucknell. As the new chairman, any chance we might see an appearance from Bucky the Bison out here at the Breeders' Cup?
Well, I haven't talked to Bucky lately, and, but we might, once we're back on the East Coast, we may bring Bucky out, because not many people realize this, but Craig Fravel is also a graduate of Bucknell, and we found out after we knew each other that we were fraternity brothers as well. So
Wow.
We kind of got a little Bucknell connection there, and we may bring the bison on. You know, Mike, I
sounds
never
like
thought
you
of that,
have to.
but you know what? We may bring that out next year at Churchill. So, be a long commute for Bucky to come out here.
Sounds like you might have to do that. Fred Hertrich, the chairman of the Breeders' Cup, with us here on Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup. Fred, congratulations on the position. Look forward to many, many more years to come and continued success. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Mike, Jules, thank you very much, and we're going to see some great racing.
Yeah, certainly will. All right. We're going to step away for one other break. As we do, we'll leave you with this live look of Irish-bred Ulysses, and we'll come back with more. You are watching Breakfast at the Breeders' Cup live from Del Mar. Mike Penna and Jude Feld of the Horse Racing Radio Network welcoming you back to Del Mar, getting set for the World Championships, the 34th running. Now just 1 day, 3 hours, and 37 minutes away. And Jude, we have been counting down to the championships for several months now. Really, since we got past the Triple Crown, we started bringing you live coverage on the radio of so many of those Breeders' Cup Challenge win-in-your-in events. And then here we are, and just 1 day away, and the excitement is building. So many of the horsemen who are participating, along with their families and their friends, have made their way to the apron area to watch all of the gallops and final training preparations here this morning. The clouds are still with us, but you can see pokes of sunshine coming through there, and looking forward to what is going to be a spectacular couple of days of racing. If you're wondering about the weather the next couple of days, it is going to be picture perfect. Temperatures in the upper 60s, right around 70 degrees, and sunshine. Should be a fast main track, firm turf, and great venue for the 34th World Championships.
Yeah, from your mouth to God's ears, we've been having some rain scares during the week. People saying 40% chance of rain on Saturday and all that stuff. But looks like we're going to be free and clear.
I looked this morning. According to weather.com, it was clear on Saturday, and Friday looks like we're going to be in good shape too. So we shouldn't have any issues from a weather perspective. And when you come here to San Diego, you shouldn't.
You shouldn't. And there's one thing I really don't like when they run Grade 1 races on off tracks. I like it fast and firm. So anyway, it's going to be great. We've had so much fun here this week. It's been sensational. Everybody's treated us like kings, and we've got a great crew here too. Our cameraman Dominic's doing a fine job, and he's got a lot of work to do with the lights and stuff, trying to make us look good, which is an impossible task.
Absolutely impossible. No shot. You can just stop playing with those lights now, man. There's nothing you do that's going to make us look good.
Plastic surgery.
Yeah. I don't even know if that could help. That'd be one heck of a surgeon. So it's the 13th time that the Breeders' Cup has been held in the state of California, but as we told you, the first time that the Breeders' Cup has come to Del Mar. And Jude, there were people that had some questions, and they said, okay, well, it's not that big of a venue. How will it accommodate a Breeders' Cup? Well, so far, so good. And it's interesting. They said the same thing about Keeneland a couple of years ago, and I was one of those people. I didn't think we were so used to seeing the Breeders' Cup at places like Santa Anita and Churchill and Belmont Park and big venues. I didn't think they could pull it off at Keeneland. And you know what? It was one of the greatest Breeders' Cups and one of the greatest experiences that we've seen, and I expect nothing less from Del Mar because this has been first class all the way through.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, we've really enjoyed it here, and it's going to be a fantastic event. You can just see the preparations that have been made, and I've been waiting on Breeders' Cup at Del Mar since 1984. Right away, I wanted to have it at Del Mar, but they've done a lot of work here to make these 2 days as good as they can be. They've widened the turf course. They've changed the racetrack, and then, of course, the grandstand, the new grandstand. We call it the new grandstand because the old one was wooden and old, but this one's been around for quite a while now. But it's beautiful, and the paddock gardens are fantastic. There's so many nice things about this venue, and really looking forward to the 2 days of great racing.
Bolt Doro making his way off the racetrack right now. Jude, let's spend just a couple of minutes before we segue into our Breeders' Cup Countdown program, which is all presented by your Lexington, Kentucky area Jimmy John's. That is in conjunction with our radio broadcast of this particular show. Before we do that, let's spend a few minutes talking about the drama that's starting to unfold with the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and one contender in particular that's forever unbridled. Owner Charles Fipke, according to the Daily Racing Form, looking at paying double mount fees to jockeys. He would have to pay both John Velasquez and Joel Rosario the same mount fee because of the fact that even though John Velasquez was named to ride in the Breeders' Cup Distaff on Friday afternoon, Joel Rosario apparently had already had a call for the race from trainer Dallas Stewart, and Joel had been on Forever Unbridled for her past several starts. So the steward's ruling that owner Charles Fipke, if he's going to go this direction and she runs, he'll just have to pay double mount fees to both John and to Joel.
Yeah, I think that's very typical here in California. It's also very fair. It's the way to do it. I don't know what happened. Joel Rosario's been fantastic on that filly, but it's the owner's prerogative. But the steward said, well, wait a minute, that the fact that you want to take him off at this late date, didn't allow jockey agent Ron Anderson to book another horse for Joel, so the only fair thing to do is pay them both.
Right, yeah, and the Daily Racing Form, again, we don't know what went into the decision and how things kind of unfolded. The Racing Form pointing out that, interestingly, Joel Rosario rode Verve's Tail for Charles Fipke in the Grade 2 Turn Back the Alarm handicap last Saturday at Belmont. The horse had a 2-length lead in mid-stretch, was beaten ahead at the wire by Eskin for Money, who, by the way, was ridden by John Velasquez. So if you're looking for another layer to this drama, there you go.
Yeah, it's a whimsical business sometimes, and these are things that trainers have to deal with that they would rather not. But whatever happens, and I read a little bit on Blood Horse this morning that now they're thinking of actually scratching Forever Unbridled, but that remains to be seen. You hear a lot of rumors. The Breeders' Cup week is not nearly as rumor-filled as Kentucky Derby week is, but this is what's currently going on.
Getting a look at the field for the Breeders' Cup Distaff, the signature event, race 9 on Friday, mile and an eighth on the main track with the purse of $2 million. You see Longshot Champagne Room breaking from the rail, and then Stellar Wind, who is trained by John Sadler. He was with us on this program yesterday morning, and he feels very, very confident. You kind of read between the lines with these trainers, and John's still looking to break through with his first win in a Breeders' Cup race, but he feels like he has a pretty good chance here with Stellar Wind. Number one, she's undefeated on this particular racetrack, and number two, he loves what he's seeing from her coming into this race.
Yeah, she does have the home court advantage, and she does have some tough competition. Elate is at the top of her game right now. She's really developed in the last few months, and she's a tough competitor. So those two are going to have to fight it out probably. And I thought Forever Unbridled had a big chance, regardless of who rides her. John Velasquez is a great rider. So is Joel Rosario. But Forever Unbridled was spectacular in her last race, and she'll be flying at the finish. So it's not an easy race. Some of the other fillies have shots in there too. So it's going to be fun. Stellar Wind, she's been sensational. John's done an unbelievable job. If you look at her past performances closely and see the spacing and the races he selected for her, just a perfect management program. And she hasn't won every race, but she's won plenty of races.
Hall of Famer Mike Smith stopped by in this first hour, and we asked him about Arrowgate and the past Breeders' Cup Classics that he's been fortunate enough to win. And I asked him, I said, what's the secret to winning 25 Breeders' Cup races? And he said, well, just look at the horses I've been aboard, right? And very, very humble, but every great jockey will tell you that. It's what's underneath you that gives you the confidence, and it allows you to be so successful. And he's aboard Abel Tasman in that Breeders' Cup Distaff on Friday, and she's pretty darn good, too.
Yeah, she's a very nice filly and a contender in there. Mike, he is very humble. You were giving him some accolades before he came on the air, and he never even looked up from his phone.
No.
He was checking his emails and never even looked up when you said it. It's like, oh, wow, that's pretty impressive. He's such a great guy and a real tribute to our sport.
Yeah, he's very humble, and he's somebody who I think gets a little bit embarrassed when you start going through his resume and all of those things that he's accomplished. He just seems to be one of those guys that he knows what he's accomplished, right? He knows that he's thankful for all the horses and all the owners who put him on these horses and all the trainers. But now I think he's just thinking, okay, let's just enjoy it now and, keep moving forward. He's very humble.
Yeah, he's grateful and he's satisfied, and he's at the top of his game too. So
yep.
All of those things together, he's got a pretty nice life, Mike Smith.
Okay, coming up over the next 2 hours, we're still with you until 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern. We'll continue to look at some of the workouts and some of the gallops as horses make those final preparations for the World Championships, which begin tomorrow. We're also going to visit with some more connections. Trainer Mark Casse is set to join us in just a few minutes. He'll be here right about 8:05 Pacific time, so stay with us for that interview. Alistair Donald from the International Racing Bureau will be with us a little bit later on as well to fill us in on all of the European contenders in this year's Cup. You won't want to miss that segment. And then my interview with Hall of Fame trainers Richard Mandela and Bill Mott, which I did with them together earlier this week. That comes up in just a little bit for you, too. Stay with us. You're watching Breakfast at Breeders' Cup, live from Del Mar. Good morning once again, everyone, and welcome to the Breeders' Cup Countdown Show presented by your Lexington, Kentucky area Jimmy John's. As we roll on a busy morning from Del Mar in Southern California, one day away from the Breeders' Cup World Championships. They loom on the horizon beginning tomorrow with 4 championship races, 9 more to follow on Saturday, leading up to that $6 million Breeders' Cup Classic. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, Jude Feld, Pontiff of the Pick 4 with the Horse Racing Radio Network. And for those of you who have been watching for the past hour on our Breakfast at Breeders' Cup show at breederscup.com and horseracingradio.net, we welcome you back to the program this morning. And for everybody just joining us, happy to have you with us on this somewhat cool and cloudy morning, but this is kind of how things start out here at Del Mar. It's going to be a beautiful afternoon, and the weather the next couple of days is supposed to be pretty darn nice as well. So, Jude, a lot of fun things to look forward to, including those 13 championship races over the 2 days.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. And, yeah, Del Mar, usually the marine layer's out until about 10 o'clock during the summer. As it gets closer to the wintertime, it stays a little longer. Sometimes it doesn't get sunny until 1 or 2 in the afternoon, but that is no problem. We don't have any rain in the forecast, as you mentioned earlier, and looking forward to a spectacular 2 days of excellent racing.
You're getting a look, for those of you watching on the video feed, you're getting a look at some of the Breeders' Cup contenders who are making their way out onto the racetrack now. The renovation break has just been completed, so we'll see a slew of contenders coming out onto the track here over the course of the next couple of hours, and we'll do our best for those of you listening on the radio side of things to describe everything that's happening here. Trainer Mark Casse is going to be a busy man over the couple of days. He's going to join us here in just a moment. Looking forward to that visit. He, of course, is a multiple Breeders' Cup winner and somebody who knows a thing or two about training a good horse, and multiple Sovereign Award winner, Canadian Hall of Famer. And Mark Casse is, look at this, we're getting him all mic'd up. He's putting on the headset. Remember we were just radio,
I'm ready.
Mark? Remember the days when it was just radio? You didn't have to worry about any of this? Now we got cameras and lights and everything else.
Okay.
Yeah, he's sporting his Teppan vest. That's
Yeah.
really cool. I like
Very
that.
good.
The queen of the turf.
Yeah.
She is.
She'll be selling in November, next week at Facing Tipton.
That's why I was here. I thought we'd maybe try to see if we could pull our money together and buy her.
I'm in.
I think you're going to be the majority on that one, Mark.
We're in serious trouble.
We can find some rich guys. That's easy enough.
Happy Breeders' Cup.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Have you been out here before?
I have. A couple of years ago, I spent the summer and fall here at Del Mar.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I always said it's where horse trainers die and go to heaven.
How about this venue for a Breeders' Cup? When we came to Keeneland a couple of years ago, people said, well, it's small, it's boutique. I don't know if they can pull it off. Well, they pulled it off, and you pulled it off that day, too. And then here we are at Del Mar. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, what a beautiful place, and it's going to be an experience for all, and I'm sure they're ready.
Yeah, it certainly seems like they are. All right, walk us through some of the Breeders' Cup contenders we're going to see coming from the Casse barn. I guess first and foremost, we start with World Approval, who has just been absolutely brilliant in recent starts.
He's training super. He's a happy horse. He's bigger. He's stronger. Couldn't be more pleased with the draw, and looks like the speed's inside of him. If all goes well, I'd love to see Midnight Storm and Heart to Heart go at it early, and we'll sit back and hopefully be able to run him down.
His race in the 4-star day was just spectacular. That storm that hit was hellacious, and it didn't seem to bother him in the least. He just went about his business like it was an everyday occurrence.
You know what? He kind of handles pretty well anything you throw at him. He's just he's pure class. I think maybe the sharper turns here could work to our advantage. He's a real athlete, and he just scoots around turns. So I'm hoping that helps us a little with the Europeans.
Yeah, he is athletic, and he's such a beautiful horse too. He's so striking when you look at him, and just always has a great presence, a real air about him.
Well, you can see him coming. He's gotten wider as he's gotten older, and just like the rest of the family, ZA Approval did the same thing. As they get older, they get even wider and easier to spot.
ZA Approval still feel mad about him not getting in the downhill at Santa Anita.
Oh, yeah.
I think he would have won that race for fun.
I mean, what a mare.
Yeah.
This is World Approver's her 4th millionaire. So, just a great mare for Live Oak and Mrs. Weber.
Yeah. What's that like to see those famous polka dot silks when you come to the paddock?
Well, you know what? They're probably extra special for me, being an Ocala boy, growing up, being there for 50 years. Live Oak's been part of Ocala and been a part of my life for 50 years. So, it's a dream come true. It's something that my father always wanted to see. Unfortunately, well, he got to see some of it before he passed away, and I'm sure he's up watching now.
See, now you brought that up. I didn't. I told Jude, I said, I am not going to make Mark cry on the show.
No, I think
I
think I'm okay. Just let's not get too deep there.
Mark Casse with us here on the Breeders' Cup Countdown Show, presented by your Lexington, Kentucky area Jimmy John's. One other side note on World Approval. Since you made the decision to turn him back to racing at 1 mile on the turf, he's just been lights out. Did you always kind of sense that maybe that was the direction you might want to go with him? Or
no, I think, I wasn't sure. You have to remember when we got him, he was a maiden, and it takes a while to kind of figure him out. I think what threw us the curveball was him winning the United Nations, going 1 mile 3/8. So it had been tough at that point in time to cut back to 1 mile. But, hey, I'm happy. However we got here, I'm happy where we're at, and I'm going to take it.
It's a matter of class, isn't it? How far a horse can go. And in the United Nations, he might have just been the best horse.
Well, I that's what I think it was. I think, looking back maybe the United Nations, he had the perfect setup, and, he was just probably the best horse that day. And but for him to compete at the highest level of, like, similar to the Breeders' Cup, it appears that 1 mile is his game.
Seems like every time I've seen Awesome Slew this year, I've said, okay, he's the horse to beat in this particular race, or one of the main contenders. He's as honest as they come. He goes in the dirt mile. Tell me about him.
He's doing extremely well. He needs some things to transpire for him to win. One, we need to see a real hot pace, like maybe more Spirit and Sharp Azteca going at it. And I think Johnny will warm him up real good and try to not be too far out of it. And if the pace falters, he's going to come running. He's an honest horse. He's going to give you his very best. And I think the mile's great for him. We, again, got a great post position. And, we're happy where we're at. This is, as I said to somebody yesterday, the day after the Breeders' Cup is over, we'll start planning on next year's Breeders' Cup. This is, what we do. This is what all the planning's about. So we're excited. We have 7 here. We're proud of that, and hopefully at the end of it, they'll be able to say we won a couple of them.
Well, when you start working toward next year's Breeders' Cup, you're going to be doing it without your longtime sidekick, your son Norm, who it was announced this past week that he's going to go out on his own starting next year. So that's going to be a pretty exciting time for him, too.
Now, see, now you could get a little sensitive here. We're okay.
I'll bring you back to earth.
Yeah.
I'll take Norm's spot. I'll be your assistant. How's that?
Yeah, okay. There you go. I don't have to worry. So, this will be an emotional weekend, but I'm excited for him. And, he's worked hard. It's time for him to do his own thing, and I understand him. I appreciate it as long, that he's been with us as long as he had, and he'll go on and do great things, I'm sure, and Team Casse will be fine.
Yeah, I know he's been considering this for a while, but why is this the right time? Why does he feel like it's the right time? Do you know?
Well, last year we, of course, had Tepin in Classic Empire, and one of our goals, has always been to try to win the Kentucky Derby. And we thought, with Classic Empire, we had a great shot of doing that. And I don't think he wanted to leave that part of it yet. It's a little hard to walk away from your champion 2-year-old. And so that was part of it. But there's never a great time, so now's the time.
Yeah, maybe next year you're back at Churchill Downs competing against him in one of these races. That would be special.
That would be, wonderful. for him to be able to have a Breeders' Cup horse, and for us, and to compete against each other. But we can dream. We'll see.
Yeah, Classic Empire, arguably the best in his division for 2 years. But just a kind of a difficult horse to deal with sometimes, and I think he's going to be a great stallion.
If he can reproduce himself, you'll have a tough time finding a prettier horse, a more correct horse, had all kinds of ability. So many of the things that happened to him were beyond his control, and I've been asked many times what was the best race he ever ran. I think the best race he ever ran was the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah.
For him to overcome, you had to see him the next day when he couldn't open his eyes. Not people only saw him get knocked around, do close. Nobody else. They didn't see that he couldn't hardly open his eyes the next day. And then, it was really unfortunate about his foot right before the Belmont, and we just couldn't get him on track. If it had been that he was going to race another year, I think you would have seen him. But we just came to the conclusion, hey, look, this year's Breeders' Cup, you better be tied on the Classic. and to go in off of a long layoff, it didn't make any sense. So now he's on to bigger and better things.
We've gotten a look at Collected on the video monitors here. He's a contender for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Of course, he defeated Arrowgate in the Pacific Classic here at Del Mar last time out. You also saw Dre Fong, the defending champion in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and now getting a look at Beach Patrol, who is one of the contenders for the Breeders' Cup Turf, and maybe America's best hope to knock off some of the Europeans in there. And this is a horse that has been very, very good this year, and he looks the part right now, too.
Yeah, he's been very sharp. His last 2 races have been excellent after being in kind of a little slump for a while, but he's at the top of his game.
Mark, I'll ask you, what are we seeing from Beach Patrol here? What's the game plan as you're watching this?
Right now, everybody's doing the same thing, and that's just trying to stay happy and healthy. He looks like a happy horse. Really, the training part is over. It's now waiting and like I said, just keeping everybody happy.
How difficult is that, this waiting part now? Are there some anxious moments when your horses do go to the racetrack for these final gallops?
Oh, yeah, because any little thing puts you out now. So, of course, yeah, you kind of hold your breath. But you learn, it's part of the game, and you just have to get through it. But yeah, I'm sure if you polled all the horse trainers today, 99.9% of them said, "Let's run today. Let's get it over with."
yeah, because we've all had that happen where a horse grabs his quarter the day before the race, and now you're dead. So it's tough.
I had the favorite for the Belmont the day of entry come back, with a foot abscess. So I know all about it. And, it's why I never take anything for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Casse with us here on the Breeders' Cup Countdown, presented by your Lexington, Kentucky area Jimmy Johns. Mark, we know you have a busy morning, but before we let you go, I do want to ask you about that juvenile fillies, because you have 3 contenders in there with Heavenly Love, Geo Game, and Wonder Godot, the Ontario bred. The previous 2 that I mentioned, the first 2, both owned by the Oxleys, and that's been a wonderful relationship for you.
It has, and this is interesting because Heavenly Love is owned by Mrs. Oxley. Geo Game's owned by Mr. Oxley, so
uh-oh.
How does that work?
I'm not sure.
Well, Wonder Godot is not owned by the Oxleys.
Yeah.
She's been training sensationally, in my opinion.
She is. You know what? She could be any kind. I mean, she has a dirt pedigree. Everything we've kind of done with her is for this day, and you know what? I feel very fortunate. I think all 3 fillies have a great chance. We got lucky for the most part, with the post positions. Wonder Godot, we would love to be a little farther in, but I think probably one of the toughest horses in the race, in my opinion, drew the 13-hole, that's Chad's filly, and 13 holes very tough to overcome. I've come here twice now with Breeders' Cup favorites going on the turf for the 2-year-old fillies and drawn the outside post and killed me both times. So, now we just need some luck.
And you mentioned the dirt pedigree being by Mandela Doro out of a Vindication mare that screams dirt. And if Wonder Godot can transfer that artificial turf form and bring it to the main track, she could be very, very tough and maybe a sleeper in that juvenile fillies. Tell me about Heavenly Love and that performance in the Darley Alcibiades. Boy, was she good that day.
She was amazing, actually. I watched the race again last night. I was watching the final races for everybody that's in there, and she won almost like I don't think she ever got to high gear. And to me, she is a true mile and 16th or route horse. And I don't think they can ride them far enough. I think the same goes for Wonder Godot. She is, the farther they go, the better. I think that's going to be that's our strong suit, because there's some fillies there that are questionable how far they want to go. But again, got to have luck. But Heavenly Love's trained extremely well.
Yeah, Geo Game may be the least accomplished of the three. She exits that maiden win, but it wasn't an ordinary maiden win. She won by 9.
No, and we had a filly here last year, Valdorna, that had the exact same form, won the exact same race opening day at Keeneland, and didn't win quite as easily. And she may have been best in the Breeders' Cup. She kind of got hung up for maybe a 16th of a mile at about the half-mile pole and came running and got beat a neck. And I see, a lot of similarities with Geo Game. It would not shock me in the least bit to see her be right there at the end. She's training extremely well.
All right, this trainer, Mark Casse, he's a busy man over the 2 days. He and his son, Norm, going down this road together, the Breeders' Cup. Next year, they might be at odds with each other and competing against each other, but that would be fun to see, too. And I know Mark would love nothing more than to see his son with a couple of starters in the Breeders' Cup. Appreciate it, my friend. Thanks for being here. As always, good luck.
Absolutely. Thank you. You guys have a great day.
All right, he's the best. He's Mark Casse. We'll get to another break. We'll come back. When we return, Johnny D from Express Bet's supposed to swing by for a visit. We'll do a little handicapping with Johnny. That's next on the Breeders' Cup Countdown, presented by your Lexington area Jimmy John's. Tom Durkin, who has had so many memorable calls in the history of the Breeders' Cup, one of his more iconic ones there with Cigar taking that Breeders' Cup Classic in 1995. And, yeah, it was a nasty, miserable day, and that racetrack was just a sea of slop, but it didn't bother Cigar as he dominated the competition that afternoon. Welcome back to the Breeders' Cup Countdown, presented by your Lexington, Kentucky area Jimmy John's. For those of you streaming us video-wise on breederscup.com, we're happy to have you with us looking at some of the contenders on the racetrack for this year's Breeders' Cup. And, of course, everybody watching us and listening to us on our website, horseracingradio.net. We're happy to have you back here at Del Mar. Mike Penna, Jude Feld, and looking forward to our coverage coming up tomorrow and Saturday. We'll bring you exclusive radio coverage of every single Breeders' Cup race. It's all presented by visitbarbados.org. And, of course, if you can't get to a television to watch it on NBC, you can tune us in worldwide, SiriusXM, on our website. However you want to do it, we'll be here for you. And looking forward to all of that action. Johnny DeSantis, is with ExpressBet, and he's got his finger on the pulse of horse racing, especially these Breeders' Cup horses. Thanks for being here, brother.
Well, it's great to be here. Where else would I rather be on this wonderful weekend? What outstanding racing we have. And it's just to be here at Del Mar is magnificent because Jude and I spent many wonderful seasons down here at Del Mar. And to be here with the Breeders' Cup after the track's been changed around to accommodate it, to see how wonderfully they've set it up, it's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We were talking off the air about Del Mar and the Breeders' Cup coming here. It's something that Johnny and I have both looked forward to for many moons.
Johnny, 9 previous Breeders' Cup winners were entered this past week, including Arrowgate, the defending champ in the Classic. We saw Dre Fong on the track a little while ago. He'll defend his title in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. And Highland Reel in the Breeders' Cup Turf for Aidan O'Brien. He's looking to add to his record of 6 wins in the Turf. He'll win a 7th if he can pull it off with Highland Reel, and he has a couple of other horses in there too, but all eyes on Highland Reel.
All eyes on Highland Reel, and that's a problem for Highland Reel, I think, because last year there were no eyes on Highland, or very few eyes on Highland Reel, and he got to open up an early lead, and he held on and stole the race. Really, it was a fantastic ride. I think Shamey Heffernan, I think his name is.
Yeah.
Fantastic ride. This year, I think Ryan Moore maybe, who rode him last time and went out. If you watch that race, he went out to the middle of the track searching for firm ground. Well, he won't have to search very far here. He'll find the firm ground anywhere he looks. But you know what? Everyone else is going to have their eye on him. He's not going to get away this year. Yeah, I don't think.
That was quite a ride by Ryan Moore. And he went up to the highest part of the racetrack to try to get the ground that didn't have any water in it. And if an American jockey did that, they'd probably take him out back and that'd be his last mount.
Well, we're so concerned with ground loss.
Right.
It almost looked like the horse bolted.
Yeah.
He went so far. The rest of the field was on the right-hand side, and he went all the way to the left-hand side.
He must have got a 3 on the sheets.
And he finished, third, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Speaking of Aidan O'Brien, you're getting a look at one of his contenders for this year's Classic. That's War Decree. He also has Churchill in this year's Breeders' Cup Classic. Both of those horses trying the dirt for the very first time. And, Aidan O'Brien, as good as they get. He's won 11 Breeders' Cup races. One of these years, you have to feel like he's going to pull off the upset in the Classic with a horse like this. He's tried it several times. He's been close. Not sure this is the year, though, Johnny.
No, I'm pretty sure this is not the year. I mean, okay, anything can happen. That's why we come out here, and some of us pay our money to come out here and watch these races. And anything can happen, but this year, what a great Classic! What an outstanding group of horses. There's Bob Baffert and there's everyone else. But it's a great lineup, a fabulous lineup.
Does Arrowgate rebound?
I think he's going to run a really great race. And I think certainly if you look at Gunrunner, you've got to be impressed with him. He's done everything right. I don't know if you guys follow the Thorograph sheets, but the development of Gunrunner has been exceptional. Every race, every series of races is a little better than the one before. You could just see the development of this horse to where he is now. And he's right there. Is he as good as the best Arrogate? I don't think so. I think Just look at Dubai last year. Okay, has Gunrunner gotten better? Yes. Has Arrogant regressed? Well, he did this summer, but he looks like he's coming back. And then you throw in somebody for me, West Coast he's sneaking up.
He looked pretty good this morning,
Yeah.
too.
He's looming. A 3-year-old taking that. But come on, is Bob Baffert going to win 4 consecutive Breeders' Cup Classics with a 3-year-old?
Probably.
It can happen.
I'm not betting against it.
I like him a lot better than I like Aiden O'Brien's chances.
You went out on a limb there.
What are the other storylines in this year's Breeders' Cup that have kind of caught your eye? Some of the other races you're looking forward to seeing?
My favorite is Lady Eli because I cashed a nice wager on her in the Breeders' Cup as a 2-year-old. And then, she's supposed to be dead. She's overcome the odds.
Yep.
She's not even supposed to be alive, let alone the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf. She got beat last year by a Zop, and I don't know if Chad Brown's pulling her leg or not, but when she worked the other day, he said it was the best single work she's ever had for him, and I believe it. She's just wonderful, and I would like to see her go out as a winner.
Did you see her out here this morning?
Yep.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Just sensational all week long. She's been perfect. I mean, just perfect.
Yeah, Chad said this would be the biggest thing that's ever happened to him as a trainer if she can win and go out on top here on Saturday.
I think it would be, we all love these horses. We watch them. We wager on them. We
appreciate them.
Absolutely. And she is a great story. For me, she's the best story.
She's the story of the Breeders' Cup.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And I'd love to see her win. And I think she will win. Also, the fact that the Filly Mare Turf is now a mile and 1/8. I'll put in a shameless plug here for the Breeders' Cup wager guide, which is available at expressbet.com. It's free and worth twice the price. I know you like that one. And so go to expressbet.com, get your free Breeders' Cup wager guide, and also open an account while you're there. That won't hurt either. But one of the great stats in that guide, it's got stats, it's got picks, we've got experts, it's got everything you need to lose your money intelligently. One of the great stats is the Filly and Mare Turf. California-based fillies and mares in that race are 0 for 40.
Whoa.
Now, how many years has the race been in California? I cannot even believe. And you're talking about Bobby Frankel, Ron McAnally, some Charlie Whittingham maybe towards the end of his career. But you're talking about some Neil Drysdale, great trainers, great filly and mare trainers. Haven't won. No one's won. Never got a dinner.
That's
never got a dinner.
And the Breeders' Cup has been in California 13 times.
Exactly. Now,
so there's no home court advantage in the Filly and Mare Turf.
Is that crazy? Avenge.
Yep.
Best finished 3rd last year. And she's back this year. And the difference this year is that race is a mile and 1/8. I think that favors if they're going to do it, this might be the year. And it's Avenge. Avenge is going to be close to the lead or on the lead, so we'll see. Maybe she'll pull the upset. But I'm rooting for Lady Eli anyway.
Yeah, good point. The 3rd different distance in as many years for that Filly and Mare Turf because of the configuration of the different racetracks where the venues, where the Breeders' Cup has been held. So here's Highland Reel, contender for that Longines Breeders' Cup Turf, main contender actually, because he is the defending champion. So as we told you, all eyes on him, and Johnny said maybe that's not a good thing. Last year he was able to fly under the radar. He's not doing that this year, Jude.
No, absolutely not. And he's getting a little hot this morning, considering it's nice and cool outside. But he's
bad sign.
He's galloping on the dirt, which isn't his preferred surface. So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Johnny D. from ExpressBet joining us here on the Breeders' Cup Countdown Show, presented by your Lexington, Kentucky area Jimmy Johns. Here is Churchill. We talked about Aiden O'Brien and his contenders in the Breeders' Cup Classic. This is one of them, and Churchill, much like what we saw with Highland Reel, getting a little lathered up, and even more so here for Churchill, Jude.
Yeah, well, he's a younger horse and, not as well-traveled. I mean, Highland Reel's been everywhere in the world. He's made $8.8 million, so you have to consider that. This horse is younger and not as well traveled, and probably what's going on here. A lot of times the European horses too, there's a lot of horses on the track right now, and a lot of times they're not used to having horses come at them. So that's one of the things that you have to school a European horse when they come to the United States is the fact that they're going to have horses coming at them in different directions on different sides of the track. And so they need to learn that a little bit. So it could be an anxious time for a horse.
Johnny, as a handicapper, when you see something like this with horses that get lathered up, and especially to this extent, does that steer you away from these type of horses when it comes to putting your money down?
Well, it certainly does. And
Yeah.
if today was race day, you'd certainly want no parts of this one. Of course, we've seen the win. We've seen everything happen in this game. Nothing is 100% in this game, but it's not a good sign just because it's you're wasting energy. Now, some people would say, well, if he's like that all the time, it's no big deal. Well, it's still, you're wasting energy, and he's going to need all his energy. But again, as Jude said, for the Europeans to come over here, ship over here, everything is so different here in this country from what they're used to. It is even just walking out onto this racetrack and the grandstand, they're used to training out in the middle of nowhere along these long gallops and leisurely in a group of their buddies, and all of a sudden it really is a shock. So anytime one of them wins, it's mostly because they're a lot better than whoever they're running against.
Here's another European, Cliffs of Moher.
Yeah, we're seeing all the Aidan O'Brien horses out there
that
now.
is lathered up too. So, it just seems to be prevalent amongst these horses this morning.
Johnny, how do you like to play the Breeders' Cup? Are you an exacta, trifecta type of guy, or do you like to spread it out and go pick 3s, pick 4s, and maybe even a pick 6?
I would say yes.
All of the above.
Yeah.
What about win or place? So something basic, right?
I've chased it all. I've chased it all in the Breeders' Cup and won a couple times. I can't say that I'm probably ahead for my Breeders' Cup history because guess what? These races are tough to, everyone can run. Everyone looks good. It's very difficult. The other thing that makes this hard, particularly hard, extra hard, is that if you're playing a pick 6 or pick 4, even a pick 3, but particularly pick 4, pick 6, the form's going to hold up pretty well. I think 40% favorites for Breeders' Cups all time. So that's about where it's supposed to be. A little higher than normal, but good horses, good form. The devil jumps up in the middle of your pick 4 or your pick 6, and some horse that you could never have, you would have had to go too deep to get to, and your ticket gets too big. That's what happens to me along the way. I'll have, 3 winners. The devil will jump up, and I'll have the last 2, and I'll be knocked out of pick 6. But so, yeah, vertical. Maybe you avoid that. The payoffs are tremendous in all of these wagers because of the giant pools. This year, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try and put a couple of favorites together and do a massive parlay, like a 3-horse parlay, or maybe a 4-horse round robin with, just some chalky results, but ones that I like. See what happens.
Bet what you like. That's always a good rule.
Yeah, break some eggs.
You can't play everybody. Come on. Now, you've been watching these works and gallops. These horses are great. They all look great.
Yeah, the horses have trained here better than any other Breeders' Cup that I've been in attendance and been able to watch the horses train. It's just everybody's looked really good for the most part. You see the occasional one that you go, I don't know about that one, but for the most part, the bulk of the horses have really seemed to enjoy it here. The track is silent; you can't hear them coming by. The turf works have been just beautiful things to watch. I mean, it's really been a lot of fun doing these shows and watching these horses in the morning.
And thanks to xbtv.com, which is obviously ExpressBet's partner, they've done a fantastic job of showing these workouts and covering what's going on at Santa Anita and back in New York. They had both covered with a show that started too early. California, it was dark. You couldn't see anything when they went on the air. But by the time they were finished, between Zoe Cadman kind of quarterbacking the whole thing and Rich Migliori and input from Millie Ball, and it's just been it's been sensational.
It's a brilliant team.
Oh,
it is a brilliant
and the
team.
coverage.
Yeah.
I don't understand something, and I noticed this morning standing here at the track. This camera angle, the broadcasting that's on the big board, and it was lighter. I mean, I'm here live and it's dark, but you can see the horses better.
Yeah, the cameras will pick up a lot of
it's
that
enhanced.
light, right?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. Johnny D with us here. He's with Express Bet. Head over there and pick up your wagering guide and make those wagers. Johnny, appreciate it, my friend, and enjoy the Breeders' Cup.
Always a pleasure, and remember, the more you bet, the less you lose when you win.
That's right. Ernie Mason.
Yeah.
Figure that one out. All right. We'll step away for a quick break. When we come back, you're going to hear that interview I promised you with Richard Mandela and Bill Mott. I had a chance to sit down with both of them in Richard's office. It was spectacular. That comes up next from Del Mar. This is the Breeders' Cup Countdown on the Horse Racing Radio Network, your exclusive home for the Breeders' Cup World Championships.
Spectacular session. One evening.
What's up?
With nearly half a dozen grade ones. With a catalog this rich in quality, you'll leave no page.
Hey, what's up, brother? What's going on? And yourself? Everything's good.
November 6th in Lexington, Kentucky. Where will you be? For over 40 years, buyers.
classic Dare and Go, upsetting Cigar that afternoon. And I know that's not a Breeders' Cup race, but it happened right here at Del Mar. And Jude, that's one of the more memorable days that we have seen here at Del Mar. And it is a day that will forever etch Richard Mandela and Bill Mott together in history, because Bill Mott trained Cigar, who came in on a huge win streak, and Richard Mandela trained Dare and Go, who ended that win streak.
Yeah, I was here that day, and it was a spectacular day of racing, and really enjoyed the races that day. A little bit disappointed that Cigar lost his winning streak there, but not disappointed that Richard Mandela won the race here.
Well, Bill and Richard have met multiple times on the racetrack since that 1996 Pacific Classic, and I had the privilege to sit down with both of the Hall of Famers in Richard Mandela's office the other morning. I think you'll enjoy this interview. Here's what they had to say. The Hall of Fame trainers Bill Mott and Richard Mandela have combined to saddle the winners of 5 of the past 7 Breeders' Cup Distaffs. Of course, Bill Mott has won the race a record 5 times, and Richard, well, guess what? He's never lost the Breeders' Cup Distaff. He's a perfect 2 for 2. Both of those victories coming with champion Beholder, and I have the privilege of sitting down with both of these gentlemen here today. Richard, let's start with you, and let's look back on that day at Santa Anita last year when Beholder makes her final career start. You walk into the paddock with her for the final time. Describe your emotions as you're doing that.
Well, it's, I'd say it's like any other big race, but I guess it wasn't. We did become very emotionally involved. She was very personable filly in her stall and around the barn, and she'd been here quite a while, so knowing it was her last race, it was some funny feelings going in, but she'd trained so good the last couple weeks up to the race. I thought she was back to her best.
Owner Wayne Hughes said after the race when he was interviewed on NBC that when he was watching that stretch battle with Songbird, he thought about closing his eyes for a minute, but he didn't. He watched the whole thing. Put me in the box with you. What was it like watching that?
I wasn't afraid. I looked it right in the eye. No problem.
Had to be a thrill, though, right?
It was. I kept thinking, when they turned for home, I thought, well, we've got her. And then a few more steps, well, I think we've got her. And then a few more steps, I think we've got her. So it was a hell of a battle. Yeah.
Bill, you were in a similar situation a few years ago in 2013 when you came out here with Royal Delta, who had won the race in 2 consecutive years. Take me back to that day, and what do you remember about coming to the paddock with Royal Delta?
Well, I mean, she won the Breeders' Cup at Churchill as a 3-year-old, and then we came out to Santa Anita and her second out in the Breeders' Cup, and she just, it was amazing. It was like she beat the gate. She took the length lead when they opened the doors, and she never looked back. It was really pretty phenomenal. But as time went on, as Richard said, like with Beholder, you get pretty attached to these mares that you've had a long time. And I had, Royal Delta 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I was so lucky to get her back when she won the Breeders' Cup as a 3-year-old, and she had to go into a sale. She went to Keeneland and went through the auction. The owner breeder had passed away, and she was part of an estate. So I remember leading her to the van, after she'd won the Breeders' Cup at Churchill, and we were, I was walking from the barn over to that horse van, and she was on the way to the sale, and it was a pretty sad day in my life, I got to tell you. And so I hung around the sale, and I watched her sell, and Mr. Leone signed a ticket on her, and I saw him after the sale, and I congratulated him, told him it was a nice, beautiful filly, how good she'd done for us. And he looked at me and he said, well, have you got a business card? And I said, well, no. And so I don't know, somehow I got him my number, and he called me a week later and he asked me if I wanted to keep her and train her, and I said yeah. So I was very fortunate in order to get her back, you know what I mean? I thought it was a one and done, and we got to keep her for 2 more years. So she wound up being a champion 3 years in a row, and I was very fortunate and very lucky to be able to recover her after, going through the auction.
I almost faced the same dilemma. the Breeders' Cup was at Santa Anita with Beholders, a 4-year-old, and she was in the November sale. But I actually burnt myself with the mercury from the thermometer, heating it up. We got her sick, so we had to scratch the whole thing, and I got to keep her. Yeah, I had to go to Mr. Hughes' Breeders' Cup party. I had a bandage on my arm from the mercury burn.
What's it like, though, when you do have to say goodbye to a champion like that that's been so good to you? I mean, you both have great respect for the horse. What's it like?
Well, if you've never seen a grown man cry, you could probably see one when, you know, you take a filly or a mare, a horse that's been with you that long, and they, you know what I mean, you wake up in the morning. I mean, when you have a horse like that in the barn, you wake up in the morning and you look forward to coming and seeing those horses. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like you check and, you know, you peek in, make sure they're okay, but they've been so good to you that, you know, I mean, those are the kind of horses that can actually sort of change our lives. I mean, they really do a lot for us.
They do change it.
And we really get emotionally attached to them.
Yeah, when Beholder left the barn, she was 6, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we loaded her up at 1:30 in the morning to go to the airport to go to Kentucky, and half of the barn was there, my whole family.
Right.
The girls are all in tears. I didn't cry.
Yeah, right.
Just remarkable when you think about what both of those champions were able to accomplish throughout their career. It is pretty special. When Beholder defeated Royal Delta in 2013, it was her first Breeders' Cup Distaff victory for Beholder, obviously, Richard. Was there a part of each of you, I know you have great respect for the history of the game, is there a part of each of you that maybe said, this might be the passing of the baton from Royal Delta to Beholder as the next queen in this division?
I was just excited to win. I didn't think it over too much. She was phenomenal. I mean, the way she won when I brought her back and won the Torrey Pines and the Zenyatta, she won them in a gallop. Never let the reins out. And, you know, then we stepped up thinking, well, this Royal Delta and them they're different horses. But she was amazing. And that was the day we started taking her back and teaching her to rate, and it worked out. But 2 great mares. What can you say?
I would say a lot of Royal Delta's wins came, and she just kind of overpowered her, you know, the competition. She would win real easily, very impressively. A lot of her wins were by open lengths. But I've got to say, in fact, I just said it yesterday or the day before. I said we were talking about Beholder. I think that was one of the races of this current century. I said, you know what I mean? It was. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, if you can't get thrilled about horse racing, watching a race, you know, that she and Songbird battled, you know, the last, whatever it was, 3/8 of a mile or whatever, and they hooked it up. I mean, you know, they were both giving it everything they had, and it was just a tremendous horse race. How you could go 1 1/8 miles and finish that close, you know, how they could ever come down to the wire that close, and, you know, of course, naturally, if you're the winner, it's quite a feat and quite a gratifying feeling. But that was a great race.
I'll tell you, the close-up pictures of their faces at the wire. They've got their teeth pinned and their ears back, and they look in their eye like they were fighting for their child or something. It's that impressive.
When Beholder won her first Breeders' Cup in 2013, her first Distaff in 2013, she was 3. You mentioned Royal Delta won her first one at the age of 3. You're both going to saddle 3-year-olds in this year's Breeders' Cup Distaff. What characteristics does it take, are there common characteristics in 3-year-old fillies that it takes to win a race like the Breeders' Cup Distaff?
Good ones. They have to be good ones. They have to show you something a little extra than just your average.
I think that's certainly true. I mean, I think they both, you know, you can identify them even as 2-year-olds that they can run, and 3-year-olds. But I think in the case of the ones that I've had, which were, you know, I guess 3 of the fillies that we brought to, you know, the Breeders' Cup Distaff were 3-year-olds. You know, Royal Delta being one, Agena another, but they were the ones that I've had happened to be ones that sort of developed a little bit later in the year. You know, they identified themselves as horses with ability late at 2 or early at 3, but, you know, they never, in the case of the ones that I've had, they didn't really sort of come on until midway through the year, you know, of their 3-year-old year, and they started to progress a little more at that time.
Is there one of those 5 that, I don't know, maybe holds a little more special place in your heart than the others? I don't even know if that's a fair question.
Well, no, it's not really a fair question because you know what I mean. All of them were very important to me. I mean, even Unrivaled Belle, as quirky as she was probably one of the most difficult horses I've had to even just get to the races. But very talented, but she would kind of have a panic attack actually when you go to saddle her. She always suffered with a lot of anxiety. I mean, she was, she could run, she had ability, but she had a lot of inward anxiety that, you had to kind of control. And, several times going to the gate, Kent Desormeaux rode her, and he was off in 2 or 3 of her races. He was off before he got to the gate. She unloaded him, or she threw herself down, or she did something. So, they're all different. She probably was, and I wouldn't say those are professional traits of a professional, but she was very talented in some of the cases. I think, like the case of this filly we've got now, Elate is a very she's a very straightforward, very professional in her training, and we don't have to deal with some of those idiosyncrasies that some fillies can have. I mean, Royal Delta was she was a little peculiar. She was just tough. She was just tough. She wasn't. She didn't panic, and she didn't have that inner anxiety, but she was tough, and she wanted things her way, just a sort of a different type of toughness. So they're all a little bit different, but they're all very special in their own way.
When you think about Bill Mott and Richard Mandela, your names are side by side in history so many times because you both trained so many great champions. But don't kill me for bringing this up, but one that comes to mind, and Richard, I know you'll like this, is Darren Go, who defeated Cigar right here at Del Mar in the Pacific Classic.
He gave me a real California schooling on that day. You know what I mean? He said, welcome to Del Mar, welcome to California. If there's anything you need while you're here, you know what I mean, come on over. We're stabled right next door.
I told you that the other day.
Yeah. He always welcomes me out here, but he sure doesn't mind taking any pride in kicking your butt once you get here.
Is that true?
Oh yeah. No, you beat Bill Mott, you've really done something. I'll say that. I've always thought that since I met him as a teenager. Or a 20-year-old about Sportsman's Park years ago. About 20 years old.
I was working for Vanberg, and I took care of one of Richard's horses while I was there. I was working for Jack, but Richard shipped the horse in and left him there for two races, and we kind of looked after him while he was there. So we got to know each other quite a while ago.
He gave me a ride to the airport after I got done. I had hair before I got in that car and rode home with him. Rode to the airport.
I can't believe he'd accused me of that.
I'm glad you brought that up because your son Gary told me to make sure I asked you guys about that particular story. I want to hear if they're telling the truth and what version they give you.
I had to cram him in there. It was a little Datsun 280Z, and it would bounce in and out of the traffic pretty easily.
You said when you beat Bill Mott, you've really done something. What is it about Bill that makes him so good?
He's one of the greatest horsemen of all time. He doesn't just sit and write about it. He can handle them. He can do the whole thing. He's the real deal.
Bill, how about when you look at Richard? I know you guys have squared off so many times, but he's a 9-time Breeders' Cup winner. He won 4 Breeders' Cup races in one day in 2003. As a fellow Hall of Famer, what's it like to watch
him? Well,
I
think when his name comes up, I think anybody would tell you he's probably one of the most respected guys in the business, and I think he's always conducted himself very well, and I think people can, if they're associated with him, I think they can always be proud of that and then look up to him, and and he does win a race every once in a while. He'll kick your butt every time he gets the chance.
All right, Elate Paradise Woods, they come to the final furlong and they're right together. Who's standing in the winner's circle?
I gotta root for Elate is all I can tell you.
We don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about the weather.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been so much fun to visit with both of you, and all the best to both of you on Friday afternoon and Saturday too.
Okay.
Right.
And my thanks to Hall of Famers Bill Mott and Richard Mandela for taking the time to sit down for that interview. What an enjoyable 15 minutes that was for me to be able to listen to them and hear them tell their stories, and the camaraderie and the respect that each of them have for each other is unparalleled.
Yeah, it's a fantastic interview, Mike, and great job. Those guys are both very cool guys, and they're very confident in their abilities, and, well, they should be. I've known Richard a long, long time, and he's been a good friend and mentor to me. And Bill Mott, I don't know as well, but I've certainly made some money over the years on his horses.
The Breeders' Cup Breakfast Marquee is full. The horsemen have made their way there to enjoy a great breakfast, which has been provided throughout the week to them. There is a balcony, and if you haven't seen the Breakfast Marquee, it's a tent. There's a balcony outside of the tent, and all of the horsemen are lined up now. I'm getting a look at Kieran McLaughlin, for example, and owner Ken Ramsey, his son Jeff, standing next to him. And everybody just anxious to see more Breeders' Cup horses as they continue out onto the racetrack here this morning at Del Mar. Takaffel, the Kieran McLaughlin trainee, who is a contender for the Twin Spires Breeders' Cup Sprint, has made his way onto the track. And as he does so, we'll step away for a short break. We will come back with more. We're going to talk Europeans with Alistair Donald in just a few minutes. Stay with us. It's the Breeders' Cup Countdown, presented by your Lexington area Jimmy John's. Well, it was indeed Queen's Trust who got the victory in last year's filly and mare Turf. She is back to defend her title this year. We'll see her and Lady Eli in what is going to be a tremendous rematch on Saturday afternoon. Welcome back to the Breeders' Cup Countdown Show, presented by your Lexington, Kentucky area Jimmy Johns, Mike Penna, and Jude Feld from the Horse Racing Radio Network. Happy to have you back with us live from Del Mar as we bring you coverage of all the morning activities, including Takafel, who is on the video screens here now, a contender for the Twin Spires Breeders' Cup Sprint from the barn of Kieran McLaughlin, and a horse who just looks absolutely sensational on the track here this morning. Jude, really making a great appearance.
Yeah, he's capable of running some great speed figures. He's a very talented horse and certainly has a chance in the sprint.
Don't forget, all of our coverage comes your way beginning tomorrow on the Horse Racing Radio Network. If you can't make it to a television to watch the Breeders' Cup on NBC, we'll have you covered on the radio side of things. It begins at 2 o'clock Pacific. That's 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll bring you exclusive coverage of every single Breeders' Cup race Friday and Saturday. That coverage all presented by visitbarbados.org. Head on over to our website, horseracingradio.net, to see a complete broadcast listing, SiriusXM channel information, and, of course, to listen worldwide. You can do that right there on our website, horseracingradio.net. Well, Queen's Trust is one of several Europeans. As a matter of fact, a record number of foreign horses entered into this year's Breeders' Cup. She'll try to win the filly and mare Turf for a second consecutive year. Highland Reel, another European, is back to defend his crown in the Breeders' Cup Turf. So a lot of things to look forward to from the Europeans. And to help us figure all of that out is our good friend Alistair Donald with the International Racing Bureau. Alistair, good morning, my friend. Happy Breeders' Cup.
Good morning, Mike. It's nice to be back.
You know, we first sat down together in 2005 at the Arlington Million, and every year since that point, you have joined us on our programs leading into these big events. So this is old hat, my friend.
Yeah, but you must be getting very tired of me.
Never. It's the
at all.
highlight of the show every time you're on.
We started plugging this interview on Monday when we came on the air with this show. He said, just wait. At some point during the week, Alistair will stop by and tell you what he thinks of all the Europeans.
Oh, no pressure then.
I'm just glad you decided to join us, because there was a rumor going around that you might blow off the interview this year, because if you continue to come on every year, that people will expect it, and you need to make people watch you a little bit from time to time.
No, I'm more worried about them getting bored with me.
How could they do that? Highland Reel, Queen's Trust.
Yep.
Either of them going to defend their crown this year?
Both back. I think both have got chances. I think Highland Reel is coming into this the right way. I think they had to run him at Ascot to get that run into him, and I think that he will be absolutely on the top of his game. And I think he's going to put up a great defence of his crown. Whether he can win it or not, I don't know, because I think there are several other horses in the race that merit serious consideration.
Well, Aidan O'Brien, who trains Highland Reel, represented by a couple of other starters in that race too, but I had a chance to talk to Aidan the other day, and he's looking to add to his record 6 wins in that race. And I asked him about his program and what is it that allows him to be so successful in these big races, and he's very quick to be very humble and to credit the rest of his team as well.
Yeah, and he has a great team, and the other thing about him is that he has enormous strength and depth, so he's always going to be formidable. But if you look at that race, I think you've got to also look at another great trainer of middle-distance turf horses, Sir Michael Stout, and he has Ulysses in the race, and Ulysses has had a stellar season, and I think will be very competitive here. And if you want another horse from the European barn in the turf that I think is seriously creeping under the radar here, it's Decorated Knight. He's a 3-time Group 1 winner this season. He admittedly, his trip has been 10 furlongs, but I don't think it'll be an issue for him to go 12 around this turf track at Del Mar. And he impressed me hugely when he won the Irish Champion Stakes. He was last turning in there, and he just ran right by them all. Showed tremendous turn of foot, and almost to the point where they were entertaining the concept of running him in the mile here, which I think would have been a mistake. I'm delighted that he's in the turf. I think he will, if he stays, he will be a factor.
He was 25-1 when he pulled off the upset in that Irish Championship Stakes. Why was he such a long shot in there?
I think simply because of the quality of the opposition, and for reasons that I can't explain. I mean, he's trained by Roger Charlton. He's a great trainer, but Roger's very quiet. He's understated. He doesn't sort of blow his own trumpet. So maybe his horses get slightly overlooked by the public. I don't know if that is the case. It could be. But certainly he's a talented horse, and he's always been slightly overlooked, in my view.
Yeah, Ulysses was here last year. He was fourth behind Highland Reel in the Breeders' Cup Turf. He'll look to do a bit better. And you mentioned Sir Michael Stout. We talk about Aidan O'Brien having won the turf on 6 different occasions. Sir Michael Stout has trained 4 Breeders' Cup Turf winners.
And I think if you don't judge Ulysses by what you saw last year, he was only a 3-year-old there. That was part of his growing up process. He learned a lot when he came over. Last year, he's been a different horse, a stronger horse this year. He's done just about everything right, and I think he's here on his game.
Yeah, well, he has certainly looked the part in the mornings. His training's been sensational here. Probably, I would say, a little better than Highland Reel's been going in the morning.
Well, it's difficult to say that because Highland Reel's only been out on the track for the first time today because they've just cleared quarantine. This is their first day out on the track. This is the normal pattern with the Aidan O'Brien team. I'm never really too bothered by what I see when I see Highland Reel. Sometimes he gets a bit warm, sometimes but he runs his race.
Alistair, the foreign horses have had the edge in recent years in that Breeders' Cup Turf. They've won 7 of the past 10 runnings. The only U.S.-based runners to win the turf in the last decade: Main Sequence, Little Mike, and English Channel. So you certainly have to look toward the Europeans and the foreign horses in that particular race. But how about the filly and mare turf with Queen's Trust? She comes in much like last year on a bit of a losing streak. Can she put it all together one more time here at Del Mar?
She can, but if I have a concern, it is that the filly mare turf this year is a run over 9 furlongs. It was a little bit further last year, and I think looking at her run last year, I've sort of felt that she maybe needed every yard of the trip to get up and get Lady Eli, and so I think her task is slightly tougher this year. I think we've got quite a nice bunch of fillies in the filly and mare, but it's not one that I really see as having an outstanding chance in. I think that the home defence this year is phenomenal. You look at Chad Brown, you look at Avenge again. I mean, there's a bunch of horses there that are going to be really, really tough, and I think we could be up against it in the filly and mare.
Yeah, and Lady Eli has just looked sensational all week long. So.
Which of the races do you think that the Europeans maybe hold the strongest hand?
Well, I think if I said that we had to win one race, it would be the turf. I mean, I think, but we've talked about the turf.
Yeah.
We have enormous representation in the 2 juvenile races on the turf, the fillies and the boys, and again. We've got a lot of them, but I'm not sure that we've got a superstar. I mean, if you said on the basis of the form in back in Europe, the UK so far, probably the best 2-year-old turf horse has been US Navy Flag, and interestingly, Aidan goes for the greater glory by running that in the juvenile rather than on the turf and taking on the boys in the main track, which I think is a bold step and quite a brave one. If US Navy Flag was actually running on the turf, he would be my pick.
Right.
But he's not.
Yeah, I was very puzzled by that, too. I didn't understand the impetus behind that decision. It didn't seem correct to me, but they know better than I.
I think they know better than I. I think in terms of I can see a logic in it in that this is a terrific 2-year-old. He's won the Middle Park Stakes. He's won the Dewhurst Stakes. That's a double that is rarely accomplished. I think you've got to go back to Diocese in the early 80s or something to find a horse that did that. So he's got in a way nothing left to prove. On the turf. Were he to be successful on the dirt, then that would be another dimension, certainly in terms of his whole profile, and in terms of his future stallion career, which he undoubtedly will have.
Visiting with Alistair Donald of the International Racing Bureau here on the Horse Racing Radio Network and at breederscup.com. Alistair, you mentioned the participation in the juvenile races, and the Juvenile Turf is one that I'm always interested in because, first of all, it's a great race, but there are 6 European contenders in this year's Juvenile Turf. The most highly regarded, according to the morning line odds, is, I'm going to say Massar. Am I saying it correctly?
Massar, yeah.
Massar, yeah.
I'll give you 7, but I may have the numbers wrong.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You might be correct. 6. I'm seeing 6. Is there another one that I'm missing?
I don't know.
No. But Massar, the most highly regarded, certainly at 9-2 on the morning line. Tell me about Massar.
He's a horse, he's been running well all season. Interestingly, he's suffered a couple of defeats, both to O'Brien fillies. Now, I'm not quite sure what you read into that, other than maybe the ground wasn't quite right from on his last run. And I know that Charlie Appleby's very happy with him. I know that he's been doing great all week. And I think with the juveniles, I try and see, who I like, who looks to be settled in here, who is maybe, on the upgrade still, has a bit of potential improvement left in him. And I think Massar fits into that category. He'll certainly love this ground. And I think his trainer, Charlie Appleby, who's going well at the moment, is viewing the race with a degree of confidence.
How about James Garfield?
Fascinating horse. Trained by a relatively new kid on the block, George Scott. He's had a sensational year in terms of his only second or so year training. James Garfield has been something of a star for him. He has his best form is over 6 furlongs, or his form to date is over 6 furlongs, so they're stretching him here. And I think certainly George is not lacking confidence in the horse. He thinks he'll handle the turns. He's not a very big horse. He's quite handy, compact, and he'll whistle around these turns, no trouble at all. Has done in training. Frankie rides. Frankie has been encouraging him for some while to take this horse to this race. He thinks he has the right profile for it. If he stays. If he gets the trip, he could run well.
You mentioned if U.S. Navy Flag was in this race, the Juvenile Turf, you would love him in this spot. Well, the horse that was second to him last time out, Mendelssohn, is trained by Aidan O'Brien. He is in the race. Ryan Moore is aboard. Do you have to like Mendelssohn if you liked U.S. Navy Flag before?
Yeah, I think you have to, because again, he's also probably an improver. He's not as exposed as U.S. Navy Flag is, and he was a little bit behind U.S. Navy Flag, but it was a solid run, and Aidan is relying on him. That tells you something.
$3 million horse goes off at 50-1 last time and runs second.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
It's a funny game.
These things happen. Not everyone studies the form with the same attention to detail that you do, Jude.
So, Alistair, we talked about the horses you feel, or the race you feel may be the strongest with the Breeders' Cup Turf for the contend. Give us another European or two that we should keep an eye on and not overlook.
Who do I think might go well? We've horses that I think have impressed me in the week. Let's look at the Juvenile Fillies Turf. There are 2 that I like there. I like John Gosden's Juliet Capulet. What I don't like about her, unfortunately, is that she drew 14, the post 14, which is it can't be ideal. But I think she sort of fits my profile of horses I like in the juvenile of being open to improvement and definitely on the way up. And if you were to ask me about another one in there that I think has looked really good all week, that is Roger Varian's Madeline. I think Madeline, I'm not sure which way we go with that. But again, has some solid form and just seems to be at home here in the surroundings, and I think he's going to run a big race.
How many races do the Europeans win?
2.
2?
2.
That's it?
Yeah.
Ooh. Not as confident this year. Sometimes he says 7 or 8.
Yeah,
yeah, which just shows I'm a cockeyed optimist, because we've only ever won 6.
He's always telling you the truth.
Yep.
Though. He tells you what he knows, and you got to love that.
He's the greatest. Alistair, thank you so much. Going to look forward to the next visit coming up, moving into 2018, my friend.
We'll be back in cooler climes.
Yes, we will. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks.
Alistair Donald, International Racing Bureau, here on the Breeders' Cup Countdown Show. We'll step away for a break. We're coming back with more. From Del Mar, this is the Breeders' Cup Countdown on the Horse Racing Radio Network, your exclusive home for the Breeders' Cup World Championships. Welcome back to the Breeders' Cup Countdown, presented by your Lexington area Jimmy Johns, Mike Penna, and Jude Feld, with you here on the Horse Racing Radio Network and BreedersCup.com. For everybody who is watching our coverage around the world, welcome to Del Mar. It is truly a spectacle here, and it has been throughout the week. The Breeders' Cup coming to this oceanside destination for the very first time in the 34-year history, and all the action begins tomorrow with 4 championship races on tap, another 9 coming up on Saturday afternoon, and you'll hear all of those worldwide with us here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. So if you're unable to get to a television to watch it on NBC, all you have to do is head over to horseracingradio.net or tune us in on Sirius XM satellite radio. That's going to be on Sirius 219 XM channel 206. For those of you with Sirius XM, we'll also be on our select terrestrial affiliates around the country too. All that information at horseracingradio.net. Well, our good friend Conrad Banderoff from Denali Stud is kind enough to swing by here. This is a big week for the Denali team. As you can imagine, many of the horse farms and the consigners where the horses begin their careers are here, and they're here because many of the horses that they saw very early on in their careers are making it to the Breeders' Cup, and that's a very special thing. Conrad, welcome.
Thanks for having me on, guys. No, as you said, it's awesome to be here. This is my first time in Del Mar myself, and loving it so far. And yeah, it's my role here is to kind of fly the Denali Stud flag and to follow some of our connections, and we're very fortunate to have been connected with some really good horses this week. We sold Bolt the Oro as a yearling for Windstar at Saratoga, and he was a $630,000 yearling that we sold. So we always had high hopes for him, and he's never taken a bad step. He's undefeated and comes into the race looking great, and he's looked awesome in the morning. So really looking forward to watching him run, and best of luck to Ruiz Racing and all of them. And we also we sold Champagne Room, who was bred by Mike Casse and Respite Farm, who have been long-term clients of Denali Stud and great supporters of ours. They're also the breeders of Uncle Mo. So with a small broodmare band, they've had tremendous success, and we're lucky enough to offer the Dam of Champagne Room, lucky to be me, at Keeneland starting next week. So hopefully there could be a little bit more update to the pedigree, but she's done enough. She's the producer of a juvenile champion, so we're offering her in full to Uncle Mo, as well as her weanling half sister by Strong Mandate. So really excited about that. We also have the Dam of Champagne Room selling at Keeneland Keeneland as well, and so we're hoping that she can put in a strong effort. And then we also, one more connection we have in is Mendelssohn. We've got the half sister, so obviously that's a pedigree that needs no introduction, with being a half to Beholder and into Mischief, and one of the strongest and most influential pedigrees kind of the American turf right now, and so we look forward to watching him run as well.
We were just talking about Mendelssohn with Alistair Donald in the previous segment, trained by Aidan O'Brien and one of the main players in that race. And that's a horse that was second last time out to U.S. Navy Flag, and Alistair said U.S. Navy Flag would be his pick in the juvenile turf if he were going there. He's not. Yeah. So I asked him if Mendelssohn now has to be the pick, right? Because he was second there. $3 million pedigree. Why not?
Absolutely, and his race in the Dewhurst was a very good race. He ran well, and obviously with U.S. Navy Flag going to the dirt, that's kind of opening the door for Mendelssohn. So I think he's got a big shot, and not that pedigree needs any more updates, but it won't hurt, that's for sure.
He won't be 50-1.
No, I don't think so.
Talk about, Conrad, for people that are tuned in here and they may not understand how everything works on the breeding side of things and the sales side of things. How important is it to a consigner like yourselves at Denali Stud to have these kind of horses racing in these big races and ultimately winning these big races? What does that mean?
That's why we do what we do, Mike. At Denali, one of our big advertising slogans is we raise and sell Saturday afternoon horses, and that's the pinnacle of our sport. And so for us to have these connections running here it's all about what we do, and it enforces what we are as a brand and what we strive for every day, and that's to be associated with these magnificent athletes. And it's a testament not only to our program and the team that we have around us, but it's especially a testament to the people that we have the opportunity to work for. Breeders like Mike Casse of Respite Farm, as well as Windstar, and all these fantastic clients who really kind of enable us to be connected to these horses. And so to have these connections running on a Friday and Saturday of Breeders' Cup, I mean, that's the ultimate.
Well, one of the things you think of when you think of Denali Stud is quality, and your dad's always run a quality show, a perfect place to raise a horse. The horses, you and your family take care of the horses like they're yours, and I think that's one of the things that separates Denali from some other farms.
I appreciate that. You know, we take great pride in what we do, and we strive every day to do our best for our clients because we want to see them succeed, and we take pride in watching these horses go on and achieving great things as anyone does in this business. You know, we have a passion for the horses, and you know, it's having these connections on this sort of stage is special.
How exciting is it for you to take over the legacy that your dad set up?
You know, to me, it's everything. All I've ever wanted since I was a little kid was to come into the Denali fold and help run the operation and hopefully help to improve it and keep it going. And so to graduate Godolphin Flying Start in June and to come back to Denali has just been amazing. You know, we've gone through our yearling sale season, and we're going to have 165 horses to sell between Fasig and Keeneland November. So, you know, it'll be a long flight home on Saturday night, and I'll land at 10 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and drive straight across the road to the consignment. But coming back has been really everything I hoped it would be.
Yeah, Conrad, you can say that this is all you ever wanted to do, and I know it is. I know that this was your goal for a very, very long time. But when you think about that legacy and you think about what your father Craig, your mom Holly have built, it's pretty awesome. It's an awesome responsibility for you to be the guy taking things forward into the next generation.
Yeah, it is, and I fully appreciate the kind of the magnitude of it all, and what I look forward to is getting to be able to work with my dad to secure that legacy and hopefully carry it on at least through my career, and then hopefully, you know, I'll be lucky enough to have a child that wants to keep it going as well. So
he's already thinking of kids.
No, trust me, that's a ways away.
That's what they teach you in Flying Start. What a great program Flying Start is.
That's right.
And talk about Flying Start and the difference it's made in your life.
You know, Flying Start was a goal of mine at a young age, ever since I was a sophomore in high school, and it was just a magnificent experience. You know, it's a 2-year management training program in the horse business, and the best way I can really describe it is I tell people it's an MBA in the thoroughbred industry, but more so than that, it's an international MBA. You know, over the course of the 2 years, we spend time in every major hub for horse racing in the world. We get to experience the biggest days in racing, from Melbourne Cup to the Kentucky Derby to the Arc, and it was phenomenal. The people that you meet along the way and the opportunities provided to you because of the program, it's remarkable. And I firmly believe that Sheikh Mohammed has done so much for our industry, between the farms he's bought, the horses that he's bought, but the Flying Start is going to be his lasting legacy on our sport. I do believe that.
Yeah, it's so cool, and all expenses paid. And I've never met anybody that went through Flying Start that I didn't like. So their screening program is unsurpassed, because everybody is outstanding individuals who continue on in our game and make it better. So congratulations for that.
Well, thank you. I like to, I fooled them to get on, but it all worked out.
Conrad Banderoff, Denali Stud. Conrad, appreciate the visit here. All the best. Keep it rolling, and we'll look forward to seeing you back in Kentucky at the sales. Enjoy the Breeders' Cup.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
All right. And, boy, yeah, if you want to head over to the Denali consignment when you get to Fasig, Tipton, into Keeneland, and you can't do any better. Lady Aurelia onto the track now. You can see Wesley Ward, her trainer, who is as big a fan as he is a trainer, loves this filly, and she is standing there, as she has done each and every morning, Jude, just like a statue, like a total pro.
Computer with him?
It looks like he does.
Yeah, he loves standing out there with the horses, yeah. It's fantastic.
You remember the other day he was taking video of her as she was walking away from her, taking pictures, and that just shows you how much he really is a fan of her and not just the trainer.
Yeah, she looks sensational, too. She's trained great. Through Keeneland, she was working on the turf course at Keeneland, and then coming out here, she's looked fantastic in the morning, had a nice breeze here on Sunday, and she's at the top of her game right now. She's going to be tough in the sprint.
As we get to our next commercial break, we'll leave you with this live look at Lady Aurelia, contender for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. This is the Breeders' Cup Countdown presented by your Lexington, Kentucky area Jimmy John's. p.m. Pacific, 5 o'clock Eastern, with our exclusive coverage of all the racing action. You'll hear all 4 Breeders' Cup races with us here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. You can also watch them on NBC television, but if you can't get to a TV, we'll have you covered on the other side of things. And the man whose voice you will hear calling those races is with us now. That is the voice of racing, Larry Colmus.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Hi, Larry. Nice to have you on board, my friend.
It's good to be here. I know you were hoping to have a few people that are having, a little bigger name than me, but, I walked by and begged to come on, so it worked out all right.
If they show up, you're going to have to leave. You know this, right?
As soon as I see the white hair of Bob Baffert, I'll just go out this way.
Just jump over the rail.
Welcome back to Del Mar.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think I was here last in 1993.
Wow.
So I've never called a race here, but my mic's a little close. Anyway,
TV guys,
we don't know how to wear microphones. Anyway, it's been cool. I mean, I got out here and I'm checking it all out, and what a beautiful place. And I'm really excited about calling these Breeders' Cup races.
You did spend a significant amount of time here in California early on in your career. Tell us a little bit about that.
I was the announcer at Golden Gate Fields, 1988 to 1991. The first year. I called the first 3 months at Golden Gate. Trevor Denman called the last 2 months. So that was the first time we ever worked together. And our booths here for the Breeders' Cup are literally right next to each other. Went up and saw Trevor yesterday, and he's like, Larry, your booth is right next to mine. We've got to make sure we can't hear each other. And so I'm going to try to keep it down for Trevor a little bit.
Yeah, that's good.
He has seniority.
No yelling.
That's great.
So Trevor will call for the house, I'll call for NBC, but we're literally right next to each other, and that's when we first met, and so it was great to see him. I get to see him, at previous Breeders' Cups, but yeah, it's just great to be out here again, and the only other time I think I was at Del Mar, I was with Ed Burgart, who was the quarter horse announcer at Los Alamitos, and I was calling the Orange County Fair at Los Al, and we took a train ride down here to Del Mar. So it was pretty cool. I don't think I've been here since.
That was a fun meet, the Orange County Fair meet. Everybody ran there. Bobby Frankel and Las Barrera, everybody was there.
Yeah.
But it was.
We go to Huntington Beach in the afternoon, and then we go to the races at night.
Not a bad life.
Yeah, it was good.
So when Larry was calling at Golden Gate Fields, he called my favorite race call ever. Freya Stark in the California Oaks, $200,000 Grade 3, and it was fantastic. And when I used to get down in the dumps and think I couldn't train horses anymore, I'd put that on and listen to Larry, and it would boost me up. It would fire me up like a song before you go out on the football field.
Here's the brilliant Lady Aurelia, by the way, being shown on the video monitors now. And for those of you watching at breederscup.com and watching the video feed on our website at horseracingradio.net, you're getting a look at Lady Aurelia, Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint contender, and boy, does she look good.
She's galloping the wrong way on the turf course, which is very unlikely to see too often. She's got the whole turf course to herself, but she's running right-handed instead of left-handed. She's on the outside fence.
Why do you think they're doing this with her today?
She's probably used to doing that from racing in Europe, and it's good to give the horses a little change-up sometimes, make them change their leads differently, and I think, Wesley Ward, he's a guy that you can never question his training methods. Now the guy's going to drop her down on the rail, it looks like, or at least make her closer to the middle of the turf course, but yeah, it's you won't see that often. The Outriders very much disallow people from doing that.
For those tuned in on the radio side of things, you can't see Lady Aurelia, but she is, as Jude said, galloping the wrong way, the opposite direction that she will run coming up in the turf sprint. She's going the other way, and the exercise rider just kind of standing up in the irons and nice and relaxed. She's going along nice and easy, and she seems very calm, very relaxed, and just kind of getting a little exercise in here before we get to the championship days.
Yeah. You can see for her it's a little different experience. She's looking to the dirt track, and it's good to change it up for horses, especially fillies. Fillies get bored sometimes, and you want to keep them entertained. So this is interesting.
Larry, you might be calling her name in front coming up here this weekend.
Yeah, very good chance. I mean, the turf sprint is always really interesting. This year's being 5 furlongs is just going to be so different. I mean, that race is going to be over before it starts, and early speed will be, I think, even more important than previous turf sprints, especially going down the hill at Santa Anita when they all come at the very end. I don't anticipate that happening as here. Of course, it might.
Yeah, well, with the short stretch and the 5 furlongs, it's totally like the 6.5 down the hill at Santa Anita plays more like a mile race, and this is really a stone sprint. The inside posts usually do fairly well, and you might need Ed Burkhart to give you a couple quarter horse tips.
get as many names out of there as you can. The one thing that in race calling that I always say is every horse gets a call. You call every one. But sometimes, maybe in a race like this, hopefully, there's 12, I think, so should be able to get them all in without any problem. But sometimes those 5 furlong turf sprints, or you just can't quite get to that last one.
Are those oftentimes the most challenging race for you to call, those short, quick sprints?
Yeah, I think those 5 furlong sprints tend to be a little bit on the helter-skelter side. A lot of stuff going on, horses just charging from everywhere and just flying pace early on, and it does make it probably more challenging than like a longer race on the dirt when things sort of just settle in and you settle in with your race call. There's no settling in a turf sprint. You just go.
There is no shortage of storylines with this year's Breeders' Cup. What are some of the things you're going to be anxious to watch unfold over the 2 days?
I think the one thing that everybody is wondering about is Arrowgate. Which Arrowgate shows up, the one that destroyed the racing world, or the guy that just hasn't been the same the last couple of times? Is it Del Mar? Is he just a different horse? Is he back? There's just so many questions involved with Arrowgate, and I think that's because in my opinion, I think if he runs his A race, I don't think anybody's going to beat him, but we don't know if he's going to be able to do that. Lady Eli, her last start, I mean, what an amazing story with coming back from laminitis, not just to race again, but to be dominant again. I think that's definitely one of the biggest stories of this year's Breeders' Cup, and there are just tons and tons of good ones along the way. But to me, Lady Eli and the Classic are the two big stories that come to mind.
Do you have a favorite Breeders' Cup memory that you like to tell when people ask you about the Breeders' Cup? One that jumps out more than some others?
I've had 2 Breeders' Cups races in which I've called ridiculously close finishes and should have never done it on either occasion. That's when Mucho Macho Man won the Breeders' Cup Classic over Will Take Charge, and then when Songbird lost to Beholder last year. And I lost about 10 years of my life because of those 2 photos. Just absolutely, when the race ran live, both of them, there was no doubt in my mind that Mucho Macho Man won and that Beholder won. I had no doubt. Watched the first replay right afterwards, and I just started pouring sweat. Just like, you got to be kidding me. Especially Will Take Charge. I'm like, oh, no. Like, did I just call the wrong winner in the richest race in North America? There's no way this just happened. And, Gary Stevens sold it with Mucho Macho Man. He just raised his fist in victory, and I thought sure he won. But my angle is a little off the wire at Santa Anita. And I watched the replay once. I watched it the second time. Now, the number hadn't come up on the board yet. I watched it the third time. I am pacing back and forth, sweating profusely, just thinking I just ruined my whole career as a race caller. And then they put up Mucho Macho Man's number. I'm like, oh, I'm a genius. So, and then
never in doubt.
And never in doubt, right? And then it happens again with Songbird and Beholder, and I watch that replay, and Songbird gets this huge bob watching the replay, and I'm like, oh no, it's the same booth, and I did it again. I told myself I'll never do this again, and I just did it again, and go through the whole sweating process, pacing back and forth, hoping that hopefully it's a dead heat, like I get saved somehow. And they put up Beholder. I'm like, oh, okay, we're good.
So you were wishing they still had that rule where you have to turn off the mic at the 8th pole. Right?
I did it to myself twice, but I was 2 for 2. So hopefully I've learned my lesson, and I won't call too many tight photos here at Del Mar over the next couple of days.
Well, it's going to be a great couple of days of racing. Larry Colmus, the voice of racing on NBC, of course, at NYRA as well, and nice enough to spend a little time with us here this morning on the Breeders' Cup Countdown Show.
Sorry you couldn't get anybody better, but I was here.
I noticed they made a mistake with your credentials. It says Larry Colmus talent.
Would you like me to put the quotes around talent?
He is uber talented. He is Larry Colmus. Larry, we appreciate it, buddy.
You got it. Always a pleasure.
All right, we'll get to a break. We'll come back and wrap up this Thursday edition of the Breeders' Cup Countdown on the Horse Racing Radio Network, your exclusive home for the Breeders' Cup World Championships. Love that call from Michael Rona. Bolt Doro remaining undefeated. He is the likely favorite for this year's Breeders' Cup Juvenile. A comprehensive walloping is what Michael Rona had to say about that performance. And his trainer, Mick Ruiz, going to be hoping that that's the case again on Saturday afternoon. Jude, that's just one of 13 championship races coming up over the 2 days, and it promises to be a remarkable Breeders' Cup. So many storylines.
Yeah, I am so looking forward to tomorrow. I'm really starting to get excited. I've tried to temper myself all week.
Well, don't forget, we're back tomorrow afternoon, 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern, as we kick off our exclusive radio coverage of all 13 championship races. You can get details by visiting our website, horseracingradio.net, and, of course, follow us on Twitter at HRRN. We want to thank all of our guests who were with us here this morning. We want to thank all the folks here behind the scenes who have done just a remarkable job of helping us put these shows together over the past 4 mornings. Our producer, Sean C., with us on site. Lee Delapina back in our Jimmy Johns of Lexington broadcast studios. Just been an amazing week. Looking forward to the championship days beginning tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
It is going to be great. Let's do it. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. All over the world, you've joined us, and we can't thank you enough. For Jude Feld, I'm Mike Penna. For now, so long from Del Mar.